What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 11 saw chapter 256 settling an advertisement. Black Tiger. No, Karen looked at Sengoku dumbfounded. Unexpectedly, the Warring States period actually gave him such a codename. Thinking of the man with flame-like crimson hair, the corner of Karen's mouth twitched slightly. I'm a crow flying. Warring States looked at the dumbfounded Karen, thinking that he was still immersed in the joy of being promoted to general, so he reached out and patted his shoulder and said with a smile. Why, you can't believe it. Karen came back to his senses. It's true, I thought. Haha, you are our Marine's hope for the future. Even if you offend the 5 elders, they will not go too far. Especially 7 warlords of the sea. Although it doesn't seem like a bad thing, I believe that with your ability it won't be a problem. Obviously Warring States also knew the reason why Wetchuli asked Karen to be the supervisor, but he seemed to be very confident in Karen's ability. Warring States' voice was low and firm, and his eyes were full of expectation and encouragement. Your performance in Rog Town impressed all of us. The codename, Black Tiger, was chosen by me personally for you. This is a recognition of your strength and potential. So, come on, my Black Tiger General. Karen looked at Warring States and rolled his eyes. Thank you. After getting a look from his Black Tiger General, Warring States stood in front of the stage again and began to announce the conclusion of the conference according to the rehearsal. Putting the concluding card handed to him by Saint Wetchuli on the podium, Sengoku continued. In order to show our determination to fight against pirates from all walks of life in New World, we decided to send. Warring States was shocked all over, as if struck by lightning, and couldn't read anymore. He raised his head suddenly, his gaze piercing straight towards Saint Wetchuli like a sharp sword. At this time, Saint Wetchuli was leisurely holding a cup of steaming coffee, sipping it in small sips, as if he was not involved. When he felt Sengoku's fiery gaze, he just nodded slightly to express his agreement, and motioned Sengoku to continue reading with an irresistible look. Warring States could not help but feel a chill in his heart, as if a bucket of cold water had been poured from head to toe. Immediately afterwards, his eyes burned with raging anger. If it weren't for the current special situation, he might have been unable to help roaring. At this moment, he felt his cheeks burning, as if someone had slapped him hard. In the audience, the Marines who were still immersed in the previously announced new Marine General began to look at each other with confusion on their faces. And those reporters with keen sense of smell, like sharks smelling the smell of blood in the vast ocean, their eyes shine. Advertisement. They have realized that what follows is likely to be even more shocking than the 7 warlords of the sea system just announced. Send what? One of the reporters mustered up the courage to ask loudly. Warring States stood there looking at the card in his hand and did not reply for a long time. Coming. There was a sneer on Karen's lips, and then she quickly took a step forward and grabbed the card in her hand. Warring States was shocked and wanted to stop him, but it was too late. Send a general to the New World G9 base, and the general will be selected as. After reading this, Karen smiled slightly, then pointed to her nose and said loudly. Admiral Marine, Karen. Boom. The whole audience suddenly burst into exclamations. People couldn't suppress their inner shock and whispered among themselves. This is really beyond everyone's expectation. How many years have passed, with the mutual checks and balances and tacit understanding of all parties, the New World has long become a paradise for pirates to roam freely, and for Marine, it has become an endless nightmare. It's not that Marine has never tried to enter the New World, but because it is far more dangerous than other sea areas, Marine executives have always been cautious about sending general-level generals. The general is not only the top combat power of Marine, but also the symbol of Marine's prestige. If a general encounters something unexpected in the New World, it will have a huge impact on the morale of the entire Marine. Moreover, the pirate overlords who have been entrenched in the New World for a long time will never sit back and watch General Marine easily break into their territory. Once Marine sends a general to settle in, these pirates will surely launch a fierce resistance in an attempt to maintain their territory and authority. The appearance of any Marine general may trigger a war sweeping the entire sea area. Not to mention permanently stationed there, this can almost be regarded as Marine's official declaration of war against the New World Overlord. The key problem is that Marine only sent Karen to the New World this time, which was obviously a risky move. Although Karen once defeated the legendary pirate Golden Lion, can he really cope with the complex situation of the New World? After all, the pirate overlords in New World are powerful, no less powerful than the Golden Lions. In fact, letting Karen enter the New World as a major general or lieutenant general would not cause such a big shock, but now letting Karen enter the New World as a general will undoubtedly send a clear and strong message to all pirate groups. Challenge signal. Advertisement. At the VIP table, Violet looked at Karen excitedly and kept shaking King Liku's arm. Father, have you seen it? Karen has become a general, and he will be stationed in New World. Does this mean that I can often look for Karen in the future? King Liku quickly put down the wineglass in his hand and said with a wry smile. Of course I saw it, but I don't think it's a good thing. Regarding his daughter's love brain, King Liku said he was also helpless. He wanted to persuade Violet to be more reserved, but when he saw his daughter's eyes shining with excitement, King Riku couldn't help but feel a little relieved. He knew that Violet's feelings for Karen had already gone beyond ordinary admiration. He was not a strict father, otherwise he would not have let his eldest daughter marry Cyrus. But Karen is not Cyrus, his identity is much more complicated than Cyrus. Especially now, he is going to the new world as a general, which makes King Riku a little worried. Hearing what King Riku said, Violet looked at him in confusion and asked, "Why? You have also lived in New World for so long. Have you ever heard of any marine generals stationed in New World?" Violet thought for a while, then slowly shook her head. "It seems not." So King Riku told Violet his analysis in detail. "Ah, so dangerous. Why would Marine do this?" Violet asked angrily. "The horror is not Marine, but," King Riku said halfway, realizing his position, he immediately closed his mouth. On the other side of the VIP table, Judge stared at Karen's figure. Although the Kingdom of Germa is a maritime country without a fixed territory, it is also a member of the world government, so Judge is naturally qualified to sit in the VIP seat. The youngest Marine general in history. This kind of bloodline factor is what I, Germa, need most. Later, when he heard that Karen was going to enter the world as a general, his brows furrowed slightly, and then a trace of madness appeared in his eyes. Settling in New World. No matter what, it's always better to provide help in times of need than to add icing on the cake. As he spoke, he looked at Lei Ju, who was sitting upright next to him, with a smile on his lips. "Don't disappoint me, Karen, I'm very optimistic about you." Chapter 257 Crane's Guess Advertisement. Zephyr slammed the table and stood up directly. "What's going on? Why send Karen to settle in the New World?" Garp on the side grabbed a handful of donuts and stuffed them into his mouth. "Isn't this what you guys agreed on?" Zephyr clenched his fists and said angrily, "It's nothing to discuss. Lousy only knows that Karen is going to become a general." Garp's movements paused slightly, and he stood up. "Does this mean that this order was not discussed within Marine?" Zephyr looked at Saint Wachuli sitting on the high platform, his teeth chattering. "They must have arranged it. They know what it means for General Marine to enter the New World." "Damn it, you dare to bully my great-nephew. I will ask him now." Garp wanted to understand the problem and was even angrier than Zephyr. As he spoke, he clenched his fists and was about to walk in the direction of Saint Wachuli. Zephyr looked at Garp, his clenched fists loosened, his eyes filled with confusion. As a soldier, he has always valued obeying orders above all else, but Karen was the disciple he valued most, and this order made him feel extremely angry and helpless. For a moment, he also envied Garp. He was the freest person in the sea. And he is just a Marine. "Calm down, Garp." Zephyr finally spoke, his voice low and hoarse. "This is the Marine Commendation Conference, and all the people here are elite nobles from various countries. We can't make trouble here, we can't lose Marine's face." Although he tried to keep his voice calm, his voice still trembled slightly, like a volcano that could not be suppressed at any time and was about to erupt. Garp paused and turned around, his eyes still dissatisfied. "Zephyr, you know the dangers of the New World. Karen should not be sent there at all. He has just been promoted to general, and such an arrangement is to send he's going to die." Zephyr lowered his head, clenched and loosened his fists. How could he not know that this was targeted from above? But he is Marine. No matter how hard or difficult the task is, he is Marine and he will carry it out. He suddenly thought of what Karen said to him a few days ago. Should he leave Marine? This is a question he has never thought about, but now this question is like a stone dropped from a clear spring, constantly ripples in his heart. Advertisement soon. He shook his head and buried this idea deep in his heart. "I know. But we're Marine. We can't." "Can what?" Garp interrupted him, sparks of anger flashing in his eyes. "Can't you throw away the so-called honor just for the sake of impulse? Zephyr, you know this is not a simple task. Are the pirates of the New World? General Marine will be allowed to station in New World? I believe in Karen's strength, but they are pirates. They don't know what glory is and what is not glorious. They will definitely attack Karen in groups. Unless, I want to be Karen's lieutenant." Guillaume gritted his silver teeth and said solemnly to Staff Officer He. "Nonsense." Staff Officer He frowned, his voice revealing dissatisfaction. "Do you think this is child's play?" "Do I think it's child's play, or do you think it's child's play?" Guillaume glared at Commander Suru. Staff Officer He sighed. "Do you think we arranged for Karen to go to New World?" "Isn't it?" Guillaume gritted his teeth. "What reason do you think I have for doing this, or what reason does Sengoku have for doing this?" Staff Officer He's voice was still calm, but it was like a giant hammer hitting Guillaume's heart. She looked at Karen blankly, and then at Sengoku and Zephyr, who had equally angry faces. Then, following the gaze of Staff he set his sights on the position of Saint Wachuli. "This is the revenge of the world government." Guillaume smiled coldly. "Just because Karen arrested the former celestial dragon? Just because of such a ridiculous reason, they are going to push Karen to hell. I will never accept it." "What's the use if you don't accept it?" Staff Officer E's tone became serious. "In the final analysis, Karen disobeyed orders from the beginning. The arrest of a former Tianlong is nothing. The most important thing is that Karen's attitude makes the five elders uncomfortable, and they don't want a Marine like Garp to appear again." Guillaume looked at Garp, somewhat confused as to what Commander Suru was talking about. She asked, "Why? Isn't it bad to be a Marine like Garp?" Staff Officer Suru stared into Gion's eyes and asked, "Who is Garp?" "Marine. ADVERTISEMENT, what else? Lieutenant General of Marine Headquarters? We are all Marine Corps Lieutenant Generals, what's the difference between Garp and us?" Gion's eyes lit up. "He is the Marine hero." "Counselor," he nodded. "Yes, he is a Marine hero, and Karen is about to become a Marine hero." "What do you mean?" Gion still didn't understand what commander he meant. "Staff Officer," he said solemnly, "Marine doesn't need heroes." "What?" Gion slapped the table and stood up. Staff Officer Crane added, "The world government doesn't want Marine to have a hero, and a disobedient hero." Gion said in confusion, "Why, Marine has heroes, isn't it bad to have a benchmark?" Staff Officer's eyes became more serious, and there was a hint of helplessness in his tone, because heroes mean influence, and influence means threat. Having said this, she looked at Garp and Zephyr with complicated eyes, and her voice had a rare hint of sadness. There has always been a guess in her mind. Sighing in her heart, she continued to explain. Marine exists to maintain the order of the world, not to challenge those in power who control everything. If an uncontrolled hero appears in Marine, someone like Garp and may shake the foundation of the entire world government. That's why they chose to give Karen the identity of the supervisor of the 7 warlords of the sea, and give Karen all the stigma and infamy. And let him go to the new world and arrange an impossible task. As long as he quits, it means that he will be afraid. He is not the hero everyone thinks, but an ordinary person who is forced to give up his ideals. We can take this opportunity to weaken his influence in Marine. Gion's heart was shocked, and she finally understood what counselor he meant. This is not only a punishment for Karen, but also a warning to the entire Marine. Thinking of her excited expression just now because of Karen becoming the supervisor of the 7 warlords of the sea, Gion felt her face burning. She didn't think much about it at the time. She just felt that it was a disgusting system controlled by someone she recognized. It can reassure her in the entire Marine. But after listening to his words, she realized how naive she was. Chapter 258 In the Name of General. Advertisement. Are they going to push Karen forward and become a victim of the 7 warlords of the sea? Gion's tone was low, and she had completely understood everything. In this way, no matter which pirate does bad things, part of it will be blamed on Karen? In order to prevent Karen from interfering, they even placed Karen in the new world. That's right. A trace of sadness flashed in Staff's eyes. This is their common method. Everything depends on Karen's choice. Reject or accept. Karen. Warring States took a step forward with a complicated expression. In his heart, Karen is not only a young Marine general, but also a junior whom he has high hopes for. Moreover, Karen's arrest of Doflamingo would also benefit him a lot. Although he had stopped Karen from trying easily that day, it was only verbally. In his heart, he hoped that Karen would arrest Doflamingo immediately. He knew very well what kind of person Doflamingo was, and how dangerous it was for his adopted son, Rosinante, to be lurking around such a person. Although he didn't show it on the surface, whenever he was alone, he would always think of Rosinante in North Blue and worry about his safety all the time. Now that Karen has arrested Doflamingo, his worries have eased a little. He originally thought that this matter would be over at the expense of Karen serving as the supervisor of the 7 warlords of the sea, but now Karen was sent to the new world as a general, which was not what he expected. He quickly walked forward and took the card back from Karen's hand. Then, he quickly returned to the podium and loudly said, "We currently have this idea, but it remains to be seen whether it will be implemented." "No, I'm willing to go to the new world." Karen interrupted Sengoku, in the name of the general. Warring States glared at him and continued. The above is the entire content of this conference. In the spacious and bright Marine Fleet Admiral office, the air seemed to have solidified, and an eerie silence filled the air. Advertisement in this solemn space, everyone's expressions looked particularly solemn, as if they were carrying a heavy burden. In sharp contrast to the tense atmosphere around him, Karen, the focus of the meeting, seemed a little out of place. He sat lazily on the chair, fiddling with the nail clippers in his hand out of boredom. His eyes were wandering, seemingly indifferent to everything happening around him. Judging from his appearance, he was not at all frightened or anxious as people imagined. On the contrary, Karen was filled with uncontrollable excitement at this moment. If it weren't for the fact that he was in such a solemn occasion in the Fleet Admiral office, he might have burst into laughter. What is this called? Someone gives me a pillow as soon as I fall asleep. He was just about to leave the Marine headquarters when the world government couldn't wait to arrange a position for him in the new world. To be honest, he has no dissatisfaction with Marine headquarters, and even has some nostalgia for it. But he always carries a trace of worry in his heart, worrying that his true identity will one day be revealed. If that day comes and he has not yet fully fledged, I am afraid that the world government will launch crazy revenge on him. Although he believes in his extraordinary strength, personal strength alone is far from enough. He not only wants to ensure his own strength, but also protects the people around him who he values. Therefore, he urgently needs to establish a superpower that is not restricted by the world government. Of course, this force is not Marine, and it will never be pirates. New World is the ideal place for development in his mind. The place is chaotic and disorderly, and the influence of the world government has not yet penetrated deeply. It is the perfect stage for him to flex his muscles and cultivate his power. Are you really determined to go to the New World? Warring States finally broke the silence, staring at Karen closely, with a complicated light shining in his eyes. He tried to read some clues from the other person's expression, but Karen remained calm, as if he didn't care. This made Warring States furious and wanted to beat up this ignorant guy in front of him. Karen put away her nail clippers and said casually, "Of course, Fleet Admiral, I will go to New World." Advertisement, nonsense. Before Warring States could speak, Zephyr beside him could no longer suppress his inner anger. He widened his eyes and shouted loudly. "Do you know what it means to go to the New World as a general?" Without waiting for Karen to answer, Zephyr continued to say emotionally. "Kaido, Big Mom, and Whitebeard, there is absolutely no way they can just sit back and watch General Marine enter the New World and remain indifferent. Don't think that just because you defeated the Golden Lion, you think they are nothing more than that. Every pirate who dominates the New World is by no means an ordinary person, and their strength cannot be underestimated." He paused for a moment, then added, "After all, the Golden Lion is old and his body is incomplete. Kaido and Big Mom are in their prime, not to mention Whitebeard, who is known as the strongest man in the world. You should understand, there are only wrong names, never wrong nicknames." Karen didn't speak, just looked at Zephyr stubbornly. Zephyr sighed deeply, looked at Karen with soft eyes, and continued to comfort him earnestly. "I know that you are not satisfied with world government, and I am not satisfied with it, but this is not a child's play, this is not a joke. Yes, you can't act out of anger, and you shouldn't go to New World just because of anger." Karen opened his mouth and tried to explain something, but was interrupted by Zephyr waving his hand. "Don't worry, even if I take off my military uniform, I won't let you take risks in the New World." When Zephyr said these words, his eyes were extremely firm, as if he had made up his mind. He is confident enough to do this. Yes, the world government does control Marine's life and death, but this does not mean that he is powerless to resist. Even if he has to give up the career he has worked for his whole life, he will never let his beloved students suffer any unfair treatment. At worst, he can put down his face, move around, and use the network resources he has accumulated over the years. After all, he is an outstanding general who has trained countless outstanding talents for Marine, so he still has some face. Karen naturally understands ZFA's inner thoughts, and he also understands what ZFA's relationship means. Zephyr is famous all over the world, and 80% of the military academies are his students. If Garp is Marine's hero, then Zephyr is Marine's mentor. His influence is no less than that of Garp. He is also a sharp knife hanging over the head of the world government. Once this relationship is used, if you are not careful, the disaster may be more serious than Karen's. "Teacher, don't worry. I never had the idea of going to the New World out of anger or impulsiveness. I definitely won't take my own life as a joke. Actually, even if they don't let me go, I will go. You should know what I'm talking about, right?" Chapter 259 Call. Advertisement, Zephyr was shocked, opened his mouth, and said no more. He looked at Karen, who was still smiling, and felt a complicated feeling in his heart. "Even if you want to go to the New World as a general, are you not willing to work for the world government?" He looked at Garp again. "No wonder Garp likes you so much, you two are much freer than me. Then you can't go to New World alone." Seeing that Zephyr did not persuade him, Guillaume stood up directly and glared at Karen. Karen waved his hand and said with a smile, "Who said I am a person? There is also Smoker. And before I go, I will reorganize my own fleet." He actually thought about the pirate overlord that Zephyr mentioned. The only real threat to him was Whitebeard. If Whitebeard didn't offend him, it would be fine. If he offended him, he wouldn't mind being called the pirate overlord. How strong is the world's strongest man? As for the beast pirates, Karen really doesn't pay attention to them. They're just a group of animals. With Karen's gourmet ability, they can only be regarded as a group of delicacies waiting to be slaughtered. The Big Mom pirates were in some trouble. In the battle with Katakuri, he once used the gourmet ability to restrain Katakuri, but the result was no impact. Karen speculated that this may be because only animal-type devil fruits are conscious, and although Paramecia also has the properties of food, it does not have its own consciousness. This can be seen from Vegapunk's research on giving weapons devil fruit abilities. His research is only useful for animal-type devil fruits. Guillaume curled his lips and said disdainfully, "He is just a recruit who just graduated from the training camp." Then, he looked at Sengoku and said loudly, "I apply to be Karen's adjutant and go to the New World with him." "Nonsense." Warring States glared at her. "Do you think you can change anything if you go? That's better than him going alone." Guillaume glared back, not to be outdone. "Guillaume." Staff Officer Crane stretched out his hand and pulled Guillaume back to his seat. "The question now is not whether you go or not, but why Karen must choose to go to New World." Advertisement. Karen opened her mouth and sighed in her heart. She couldn't tell them that she was actually the Black Crow wanted by the world government. At this moment, a rapid call came from Karen's body. In the conference room, everyone looked at Karen. Karen smiled awkwardly, took out the phone bug from his pocket, hesitated for a moment, and finally chose to answer the call because he had no way of telling who was calling from the phone bug. Moxie, this is Karen. Almost as soon as he finished speaking, an impatient female voice came from the other side. Green beans, I want green beans. Then another man's voice shouted anxiously, Mom, don't worry, I will definitely get the green beans for you. I want it now, I want green beans, I want Karen. A huge roar filled the entire conference room. Her voice was very distinctive, and almost all Marines knew clearly who the owner of the voice was. One of the overlords of New World pirates, the Big Mom pirates, Charlotte Linlin. The smile on Karen's face froze. What was going on? Family members, who would have understood that I actually received such an ambiguous call from the Big Mom pirates in the highest conference room of Marine. Isn't this the voice of Big Mom? I've heard for a long time that Karen and her have a close relationship, but I didn't expect it to be true. It's not because of her that Karen wants to go to the New World so much. Ahem, you can't say for sure. You have to know that Karen himself is not bad in appearance, and coupled with his strong strength, it is not surprising that Charlotte Linlin would like him. It's just that the age difference is a bit big, but I heard. That's enough. Guillaume shouted angrily, clenching his silver teeth and staring at Karen. Warring States also had a bad look on his face. After scanning the faces of all the Marine generals, he naturally knew that Karen could not have any entanglement with Charlotte Linlin. He also knew that Karen had been in too much limelight in the Marines recently. Not everyone likes people who are in the limelight, and no one likes young people who are in the limelight. Although he has never heard that the wind will destroy the trees that are beautiful in the forest, but he still understands the truth. Advertisement, and recently, the world government is preparing to ruin Karen's reputation. If someone with intentions catches this matter, it is very likely that Karen will be completely destroyed. Quiet. Zephyr stood up directly. Everyone closed their mouths involuntarily and turned their eyes to him. Karen, what's going on? Karen touched her nose and said to the phone bug in a bad tone. Hey, who are you? Do I know you well? Bring it to me and let me talk to him. A calm man's voice came from the phone. Okay, Katakuri. After a while, Katakuri said slowly. I am Katakuri, the opponent you defeated last time. So it's you. Why, don't you accept it? Karen said casually. He benefited a lot from the last battle with Katakuri, and his ability to predict color was also learned from the battle with him. He is confident that if he fights him again, he will win very easily. Katakuri did not become angry because of Karen's ridicule, and his tone remained calm. I'm not here to argue with you, Karen. Haha, other than fighting, I can't think of any reason for you to come to me, Karen sneered. In fact, he had heard Big Mom's voice just now and guessed her needs. I didn't expect that the green beans I made casually would cause such a big stir. Doflamingo was pulled out by Karen because of its entire Don Quixote, and Malinfondo was invaded by Karen because of it, and a slave escape occurred that shocked the world. Now the Big Mom pirates actually contacted Karen because of it. Haha, maybe, Katakuri continued without comment. First of all, congratulations to you, Karen, for becoming the youngest general in Marine history. The corner of Karen's mouth twitched slightly, wondering if Katakuri knew that she was talking to him in public. This is giving yourself eye drops. Are you familiar with me? Speak directly, Karen said coldly, showing no mercy. Don't be so cold, maybe we will be a family soon. Chapter 260 Rejection Advertisement. At this time, a slightly sharp male voice came from the other end of the phone. Karen narrowed her eyes slightly and looked ugly. What do you mean? Don't be so hostile. First of all, let me introduce you. I am the Candy Minister of Tolland, Charlotte Perispero. Perispero said with a smile. That is the Big Mom pirates, the eldest son of Charlotte Linlin. What do you mean by what you just said? Karen frowned slightly. You should have heard just now, my mother needs green beans, and you happen to be the only one who can help her. Perispero's tone was very relaxed, and he seemed very sure that Karen would do what he asked. Karen was so angry that he laughed. Why do you think I should help a pirate? Don't say that, Karen, I know your situation is very dangerous. Aren't you going to enter the New World? As long as you agree to help us provide green beans in Tolland, we promise not to take the initiative to cause trouble for you. Of course, if you feel that Marine is not a good place, or if you can't survive in New World, we are also very happy to provide you with a place in New World. Perispero seemed to be a talker, and he never stopped talking. If you have any plans to join our Big Mom pirates, you can choose any of my sisters. Maybe you will call me brother-in-law in a few days. How about it? I'm just offering green beans, you shouldn't refuse. As he spoke, without waiting for Karen to speak, he continued. You shouldn't reject us just because we are pirates, we really mean it. As soon as he finished speaking, Karen heard a huge sound of house collapse coming from the other side of the phone, and at the same time, it was mixed with Charlotte Linlin's murmur. I want green beans. I want Karen. Karen's mind moved. This was an outbreak of Soraya. Perispero, right? I'm not interested in your proposal. I don't have any green beans that Big Mom needs. Even if I do, I don't intend to give them to you. That's it, Gaba. The phone caller was directly hung up by Karen. Just kidding, even if he wanted to cooperate, he would have to wait until no one was around to talk. I didn't expect Big Mom to be eyeing your green beans. Zephyr said slowly. As one of the few people who tasted Karen's food, he naturally knew how magical Karen's food was. Advertisement Garp also nodded. I have long heard that Charlotte Linlin is a serious food lover, so it is really no surprise that she is eyeing Karen's green beans. Warring State's mind moved. He knew a little more than others. Although he had not personally tasted Karen's food, he knew how famous Karen's magic beans were in the underground world. It is even more fascinating than the drugs in this world, and, more importantly, it does no harm to the human body. Every time magic beans appear in the underground world, a group of wealthy nobles will rob them. It has long become a marketable and priceless legend. 5 elders also asked him more than once, asking him to help find out where Karen got his green beans. Karen had clearly told himself that he got all those green beans by accident, but now he didn't have any on him. Warring States also reported the information he got from Karen to the 5 elders truthfully, but he didn't know whether they believed it or not. He even suspected that Karen was not targeted by the 5 elders because of the private arrest of Doflamingo. I'm afraid Aomame also had a lot to do with it. Are you really out of those green beans? Sengoku looked at Karen suspiciously. Karen shrugged and said with a smile, it's gone a long time ago. Those are just things I got by accident. Karen clearly felt that after mentioning Aomame, more marine generals looked at him, and many of them had exploratory and malicious looks. All this seems to be reasonable. After all, Marines are also ordinary people with various emotions and desires. When faced with things that may bring huge benefits, they will naturally develop some other small ideas and thoughts. This is due to human nature. Now is not the time to talk about this matter. Guillaume interrupted. After Karen gained the ability to be a gourmet, she ate the first meal she cooked. She also knew that this was Karen's secret and didn't want anyone else to pry into it. The news spread so fast, Sengoku sighed. With the world government's deliberate publicity, the whole world knew that Karen was going to the New World as a general. Damn it, if you publicize it like this, don't you have to force Karen to go to New World? Zephyr clenched his fists. This is exactly what they want. If they don't go, then this marine meeting will become a joke. Warring States said slowly, with a hint of solemnity in his steady voice. He understood that the world government's intention was to put pressure on Karen and force him to submit. I don't care, if you really want to go, then I will go with you. Guillaume stared at Karen. Karen sighed again, and the topic seemed to have returned to its original point. Advertisement. Why doesn't he want Guillaume to be by his side? But he also knew that Guillaume was a Marine who grew up in Marine's headquarters after all, and the values and morals she accepted have long been deeply imprinted in her heart. If the world government or she really discovers Karen's secret, she may not necessarily side with Karen without hesitation. What he wants to do involves many people, and he cannot let everyone take risks just because of temporary emotions. Guillaume, I don't want you to get involved in this turmoil. Karen's tone was serious, with a trace of determination in his eyes. The situation in the New World is complicated, and unexpected things may happen at any time. If you stay here, you can better contribute to Marine. Besides, if something goes wrong, I will have someone to turn to after I come back from New World. Karen said half-jokingly, what are you talking about? Guillaume glanced at him and said, aren't you Arazawa-sensei who you can rely on? Ahem, I don't care about his life or death. Zephyr pretended to be angry. Then Garp. Garp raised his eyebrows and glanced at Counselor He, who was deep in thought, I am alone. Then, he grabbed a handful of donuts and put them in his mouth. As an elder of Guillaume, how could he not know what Guillaume was thinking? Moreover, he also felt that nothing would happen to Karen entering the New World. Even if something happened, he believed that Karen's strength would be able to solve it perfectly. Even if it could not be solved, Karen would be able to escape unscathed. That day in Rogue Town, he clearly felt the Conqueror's domineering power erupting from Karen. That powerful aura reminded him of when he was young. The Conqueror's domineering power exuded by Karen was no less than his own back then, and might even be stronger. He seemed to see himself when he was young, leading a group of passionate young people to bravely lead the team deep into the New World to capture Roger. Now he is equally confident that Karen can do it too. Those pirates are far from as harmonious and united as the world imagines. They are full of fights and conspiracies. Once Karen shows her true power, the pirates will only be shocked and frightened, and they will realize that Karen is by no means an easy target to offend. Okay, it's too early to talk about this now. Don't forget that before going to the New World, Karen still needs to form a fleet and recruit and assemble the selected pirates. Those 7 people are equally difficult to mess with. Chapter 261 Candidates Advertisement. The Port of Marinefondo. Zephyr and Karen stood side by side, feeling the damp and salty breath of the sea breeze. White smoke slowly exhaled from Zfa's mouth. Since Uda moved into his house, he rarely smokes. That sentence is not just talk. Zephyr suddenly spoke. Karen was silent for a while and said slowly, maybe, maybe not. But, teacher, I hope you can understand that I will always be me and will not do anything detrimental to Marine. Is this why you don't want Guillaume to leave with you? Karen nodded. She's just like you. This answer seemed to answer the question, but both Zephyr and Karen knew what it meant. When are you leaving? Waiting for the 7 warlords of the sea matter to be settled. Zephyr sighed. They are really good at picking people. Those 7 people are all famous pirates. They are probably not much worse than the ones in New World. Karen smiled slightly, took out the list from his pocket, and began to analyze it carefully. Jorakal Mahawk, Shah Crocodile, Moonlight Moria, Don Quixote Doflamingo, crossed out, Hanaja, Fisher Tiger. There were 6 people in total, some whom Karen knew and some whom he didn't. To Karen's surprise, Tiger's name also appeared on it. In his information column, there was no fact that he was a slave. Some only have one sentence. Fisher Tiger, captain of the Sun Pirates, is a supernova pirate who has defeated many veteran pirates in the New World. Advertisement this is? Karen rubbed his chin. It seems that the 5 elders do not intend to reveal Tiger's identity. Yes, Tiger can be said to be a pirate forced by the world government. If his past is revealed, it will be detrimental to the world government and marine. Unfavorable. Except for Tiger, the details of other pirates are clearly marked on the list. Karen knew all the information about the other people, but mainly there were 2 people inside who made Karen curious. One of them is Hanaja. He does not remember that there is such a number 1 character in the original work. Hanafuda, bounty of 13,500 belly, animal devil fruit, ancient species, ancient dragon form ability user, good at using scythes and bolas, likes to collect ancient animal devil fruits, defeated many powerful ones in the Grand Line a pirate. There are many devil fruit users in his ancient pirate group. Haha, isn't this so cute? There was a sneer in Karen's heart. He had lost interest in many things. He didn't even care about Kaido, let alone a copycat version. How is it? Zephyr asked curiously, are you sure you can capture them? Karen stretched his body and said casually, except for Jorakal Mahawk, who is a bit interesting, everything else is very easy. In fact, he didn't take Jorakal Mahawk seriously. He didn't mind letting the world's greatest swordsman see what real swordsmanship was. Jorakal Mahawk. Zephyr fell into deep thought and said slowly, he does have strength, but it's a bit tricky. Have you seen him? Karen asked curiously, because he could feel that the expression on Zephy's face seemed a little unhappy after mentioning Mahawk. Sure enough, Zephyr said angrily, of course not. If I could see him, I would definitely send him to prison myself. Karen's mouth twitched slightly and he looked up and down at the angry marine in front of him. Zephyr noticed Karen's gaze and became even angrier. What, you think I'm old and can't do it? Ahem, Karen, who was seen through, coughed lightly to cover up his embarrassment, and then said with a smile on his face, how can that be possible? Who is the teacher? Let alone Mahawk. Even if Whitebeard comes, he may not be the teacher. My opponent, who is number 1 in the world, is just a kid playing in the mud in front of the teacher. When Karen said this, Zephy's face turned red, and he laughed and cursed. You brat, you are so brave, you dare to make fun of me. No way. Karen's face was flattering, making Zephyr laugh. Marine's life has made him serious and calm, but in front of this young student, he can always find a trace of long-lost relaxation. Advertisement, what a nice young man, he sighed. Seeing that he was still thinking about his life, Karen quickly stopped and asked, then why does the teacher seem to be quite hostile to Mahawk? According to the data, he seems to be always alone, and as a martial arts idiot, he doesn't seem to have done anything harmful to nature. Could it be that Marine saw him rowing a boat and then made Marine jealous? Karen thought to herself. Zephy's smile froze, and then he sighed, look at the information carefully. What is his nickname? Hawkeye. Karen scratched his head. Zephyr rolled his eyes, looked carefully to see if there are others. Karen lowered his head and carefully checked Hawkeye's detailed information. He really found something different at this time. Marine hunter. Zephyr nodded. Compared to other pirates, who are accustomed to murder, arson, and massacre, Mahawk is famous for capturing Marine. The pirates arresting Marine is simply appalling. The impact of these things is worse than those pirates who killed people and set fires. He brought our Marine's reputation into disrepute. How can I not be angry? At this point, his cheeks turned red again. For Zephyr, who valued Marine's glory above all else, Mahawk's behavior was undoubtedly a violation of his beliefs. Karen's mind moved. In the future, Buggy the Clown's Cross Guild will also target Marine generals as bounties. As long as they can capture the corresponding generals, they will get the bounties. It is difficult for Karen to suspect that this idea was not from Hawkeye. After all, now what the guild does is what he has done before. That's it. Karen nodded. When I see Jorakal Mahawk in the future, I will help the teacher teach him lesson. Don't be careless, Zephyr said seriously. Mahawk's strength is probably not much worse than that of the Golden Lion. It may be stronger. After all, he is at his peak. Karen glanced at the bird flying in the sky and said with a smile, who is not at the top? I'm looking forward to playing against him. Chapter 262 Undersea Great Prison. Advertisement playing against an opponent like Hawkeye was Karen's dream when he first came to this world. Feeling Karen's gaze, the bird flew back from the air into Karen's hand. Its feathers had become darker since the last time it absorbed Karen's conquerors. Even his main sword form, because it has been covered by Karen's weapon color for a long time, is darker than when Karen first got it. It already has the characteristics of becoming a black sword. I don't know which one is stronger or weaker against the Yi in Hawkeye's hands. Karen was looking forward to it. Is this the famous sword that ate the devil fruit? Zephyr asked, looking at the bird that fell on Karen's shoulder. Yes, this was given to me by the teacher. Karen's mind moved, and the bird changed into a sword form and floated in front of Karen. Zephyr looked up and down for a while and said with a smile, "When I gave it to you, it was just a good and sharp knife. Now I'm afraid it has grown into a big sharp knife. And judging from its sharpness and temperament, it can be said that it is a sharp knife. There is nothing wrong with a supremely sharp sword." Karen held the hilt of the sword, and the armed color instantly covered it, and then waved towards the sea. A ray of sword light instantly cut through the sea surface, and the sea surface seemed to have been cut with a huge opening. The turbulent seawater poured down like a waterfall, stirring up a huge wave of tens of meters high. The sea water quickly separated on the left and right sides of the sword light, forming two obvious water walls. After stagnating for more than 10 seconds, it gradually regrouped into its original calm and vast appearance. This was just a casual blow from Karen. If he used his full strength, I'm afraid the entire sea area would tremble. Zephyr stared at this scene in confusion. During the battle between Karen and Rayleigh, he had seen Karen's swordsmanship, but compared with this attack today, it was completely different. Karen looked at all this with satisfaction and threw the Tibetan fung into the air. It instantly transformed into a bird and moved around in the air. "How is it, teacher?" Karen asked proudly. When it comes to swordsmanship skills, he only thinks that he has no skills, as long as he can chop with a sword. He can conquer 10 levels with one force, and with the blessing of unparalleled skills, he can be considered to have a basic understanding of any swordsmanship. Yes, no wonder he defeated the Golden Lion. Zephyr gave a thumbs up and praised Karen. Haha. Karen smiled slightly and looked at the list in his hand again, thinking about who to recruit first. Wait a minute, didn't it say there were 7 pirates? Karen frowned slightly. Even if you include Doflamingo, who has been removed from the list, there are only 6 on the list, right? Who is the other pirate? Karen doesn't think there are only 6-7 warlords of the sea, or that the remaining one has not yet been determined, otherwise it would be better to just call him Lu Wukai. Advertisement. Zephyr smiled and said, "There is indeed a quota, and that quota should have been discussed within Marine. But now that you are the supervisor of the 7 warlords of the sea, it is up to you to decide the quota." Is it up to me? Karen put away the list and thought about the options in his mind. It didn't take long for a meaningful smile to appear on his lips, and he thought of a suitable candidate. The first half of the Grand Line Paradise. Dead Zone, Undersea Great Prison, Impel. The next level is the 6th level of Underwater Prison, Eternal Hell. That's where you will stay for the rest of your life. Magellan, the warden wearing long black horns and black wings, escorted Doflamingo into the elevator. With the sound of the iron door opening and closing, a rotten smell hit my face, which was disgusting. Doflamingo frowned slightly. Although he had experienced countless blood and stench in countless battles, this rancid feeling still made him feel uncomfortable instinctively. Endless darkness and despair, what a perfect place. A sneer appeared at the corner of Doflamingo's mouth, his eyes wandering around the elevator. Of course it's a perfect place, Magellan responded coldly, for a prisoner. Prisoner? Doflamingo smiled contemptuously. I am indeed a prisoner. What about you, warden, can you get out? Magellan also smiled and said, as expected of Heavenly Yaksha, even though he is here, he still does not forget to provoke me. Then, he changed the topic and his voice was loud and clear. If I can fulfill my duty, even if my life stays on this dark seabed forever, I am willing. Because here, I am free. Doflamingo listened quietly, his face expressionless. The elevator finally reached the 6th floor, and the door slowly opened, revealing a dark and damp space. Let's go. Oh, I forgot, you can't even walk without your legs. Magellan sneered fiercely, then waved his hand, and several guards with animal characteristics carried Doflamingo out. The veins on Doflamingo's forehead twitched uncontrollably, and a gloomy look flashed in his eyes. He stared at Magellan's face as if trying to memorize his appearance. Bah. Very good, I remember you. Advertisement. Magellan still looked at him with a smile on his face, not to mention that Doflamingo had his limbs cut off and was restrained by sea tower stones. Even if Doflamingo was at his peak, he was not afraid of Doflamingo. In the eternal hell on the 6th floor of the underwater prison, Doflamingo is not the first person to threaten him, nor is he the first person to provoke him. If he takes everyone's words to heart, then he has already proved that he is not good to stay here. Take another look, otherwise I don't know when we'll have to wait until the next time we meet. Doflamingo snorted and turned to look at the surrounding environment. Eternal hell is surrounded by towering iron railings. These railings are not ordinary steel railings, but sea tower stone railings cast by the world government at a huge cost. Here, no matter how ferocious a pirate you are, you will not be able to escape from here. The Golden Lion is the only exception. The group of people walked towards the deepest part of the prison. The further they went inside, the darker it became, and the smell of decay became stronger. There are all kinds of criminals in the prison, and there are even some world-famous top men, and their legends are still circulated in the outside world. But here, they only have one identity, and that is the prisoners of eternal hell. They didn't see strangers coming in and yelling at the top of their lungs like other floors. As well-known and respectable guys, they still maintain their dignity. Arriving at an uninhabited cage in the depths, Magellan opened the cell door, looked at Doflamingo, and showed a captivating smile. "Welcome to eternal hell." His voice echoed in the empty prison, looking particularly eerie. "Here, you will face a lifetime of loneliness and despair." After Magellan's cold and heavy shackles were locked around Doflamingo's proud neck with a clang, Doflamingo's originally arrogant and domineering expression seemed a little dim. As the warden of underwater prison, Magellan has more matters of his own. For example, go to the bathroom. The heavy prison door closed with a dull sound, Magellan's footsteps gradually moved away, and the entire eternal hell fell into eternal darkness and deathly silence. A long time passed, until Doflamingo's restless heart gradually calmed down, when he suddenly heard the sharp and harsh clashing sounds of iron chains coming from the dark and damp prison next to him. Doflamingo frowned slightly and looked up curiously in the endless darkness. A fierce man with ferocious muscles appeared in his sight. Every muscle in this man's body was tense. At this time, he was tirelessly doing push-ups in a small space. Upon noticing Doflamingo's probing gaze, the fierce man stopped suddenly. Then, he slowly raised his head and faced Doflamingo with his wild gaze. The two of them just looked at each other quietly, as if time had frozen. After a moment, the corners of the man's mouth raised slightly, revealing a set of pale teeth. Chapter 263 Karen Bargain's Advertisement. No, Sengoku slammed the table and stared at Karen angrily. "Do you know how dangerous that guy is? We only managed to arrest that guy in Impel after launching a buster call. It is no exaggeration to say that he alone has the power to destroy a country. And you actually want to put him back into the sea." Opposite Sengoku, Karen sat casually on a chair, looked at the frantic Sengoku, and said nonchalantly, "Of course I know. If he didn't have this ability, I wouldn't choose him." You. Warring States was so angry that his face was red, as if he was about to spit out fire, and his throat seemed to be blocked by a ball of cotton. He was breathing hard and could hardly speak complete words. Seeing this, Karen immediately took 3 steps and 2 steps forward. He didn't want the news to make the newly appointed Marine Fleet Admiral angry to death. He was just about to pat his back to comfort the newly appointed irritable Marine Fleet Admiral, when there was a pop, and Karen's hand was violently thrown away. "I can't possibly let him return to the sea, so just give up." Sengoku panted heavily, clenching his hands into fists, and veins bulged on his arms. He worked hard to adjust his emotions. After a long time, he slowly released his fists and covered his chest, as if he was suffering from huge pain, and then roared loudly. "Don't you think this sea is chaotic enough? That's a terrifying monster called the descendant of the devil." The fact that Karen was assigned to New World and 7 warlords of the sea had already upset him. Now, Karen actually dared to propose that Douglas Bullet, the heinous criminal, return to the sea. This undoubtedly poured a bucket of oil on his originally burning anger, causing him to become furious in an instant. How could he forget who Douglas Bullet really was? That is a terrifying monster recognized by the whole world as the devil's descendant. He seems to be a war machine born for fighting. He exudes a ruthless aura from his bones. Wherever he goes, blood is everywhere and corpses are everywhere. Advertisement. The price paid to capture him was even more astonishing. It took an entire buster call, plus the secret assistance of countless pirates, to subdue him. It is simply unreasonable for Karen to want to release such a frightening and terrifying man from his prison and make him the new 7 warlords of the sea. The anger in Zhang Guo's heart rose again, like a volcano erupting. He stared at Karen, his eyes full of disappointment and anger. Karen had expected that this matter would not be so easy, but he did not expect that the Warring States period would be so conflicting. But he also has his own ideas. For the final candidate of 7 warlords of the sea, he can find any pirate with some strength and forcefully recruit him. But Douglas Bullet is undoubtedly the most suitable person for Karen. First of all, he and Mahawk are alone and have no entanglements with other forces. Then, before he became a pirate, he was a soldier. Soldiers are easier to accept orders and discipline than other people. Apart from the shortcoming that he always wanted to challenge the masters, there were basically no other problems with him. But this is not a shortcoming for Karen. Karen is about to go to the New World. Douglas Bullet's combativeness and strength are exactly what Karen needs. As for whether Douglas Bullet can play for Cullen, Cullen doesn't think it is a problem, as long as he is stronger than him. You must know that the reason why Douglas Bullet stayed in the Roger Pirates was because Roger's strength convinced Douglas Bullet. Later, after Roger got sick, he felt that Roger would become weaker and weaker in the future, and he wanted to be the best. Roger stayed in his memory and continued to transcend before he chose to leave. And Karen is at his peak. As long as he can be suppressed steadily, Douglas Bullet will always stay by Karen's side and help him. Karen has this confidence that impresses Douglas Bullet. Finally, and most importantly, there is no doubt about Douglas Bullet's strength, and his combat effectiveness is top-notch in the entire pirate world. Karen naturally took over the position of supervisor of the 7 warlords of the sea, not to enhance the strength of the world government, but more importantly, he wanted to strengthen and expand his own power. Douglas Bullet is undoubtedly a purer person than the candidate chosen by the world government. It will be very exciting to explore the new world with such a fighting maniac. Douglas Bullet is a natural fighting machine. If you let him out, can you bear the consequences? Sengoku asked again. Karen looked at Sengoku calmly and said calmly, Fleet Admiral, no one is born a fighting machine, and Deathless Bullet is the same. Advertisement Warring States paused slightly and heard what Karen meant. The reason why Deathless Bullet became a fighting machine is of course not born. It has to do with his childhood experience. If he had not been born in the country of endless war, in the Grand Line, would he have a happy family like others? Woolen cloth? But without if, he has become a fighting machine. Warring States understands this better than anyone else. The sea is cruel and the world is. I'm going to the new world soon. Seeing Sengoku deep in thought, Karen added, you know how dangerous it is there. If I can conquer Deathless Bullet, then he will undoubtedly be my biggest helper. Isn't letting pirates fight pirates the most important reason for the establishment of 7 warlords of the sea? If I can't conquer him and let him be used by me, then the establishment of 7 warlords of the sea will be a joke. What do you mean? Sengoku frowned. A trace of hesitation flashed in his eyes. You want to bring the 7 warlords of the sea to the New World? Karen nodded, with a trace of madness in his calm eyes. Many people told me that New World is the territory of pirates. Since it is the territory of pirates, then we will hand over New World to them. What I mean is to let all the pirates go to the New World. If they don't like it there, just let them kill each other. Karen sneered and continued. Isn't this exactly what the world government wants to see? Since we are pursuing excitement, we should carry it out to the end. Warring States looked at Karen blankly, and then smiled. Boy, are you taking it for granted? Have you ever thought that with the increase of New World pirates, the strength of New World pirates will increase? At some point, in the end, as their desires increase, those pirates will definitely fight back from the New World. By that time, marine strength alone may not be able to curb their development. Ha ha ha, you're right. I thought it was too ideal. However, if there is only one Deathless Bullet, it shouldn't have any impact. Karen narrowed her eyes and smiled like a little fox. The skill of bargaining is to first offer a price that the other party cannot accept, and then state your true purpose. Compared to the entire 7 warlords of the sea being brought to the New World by Karen, Sengoku will definitely be more accepting of just one of them. That's true. Zongguo nodded drowsily, then immediately reacted and cursed with a smile. Good boy, I was almost bypassed by you. Aren't we talking about the release of Deathless Bullet? You had actually lifted me to such a high level. He, you are indeed a wise general. I can't deceive you at all. Karen, who saw through his thoughts, said with a smile. But, listening to what you said, it seems that, indeed, it is not unacceptable. Warring States rubbed his temples and said seriously. Okay, I can let him go, but the premise is that you can be sure that he can work for us. If anything goes wrong, you will be solely responsible for it. Karen immediately saluted with a military salute and responded loudly. Promise to complete the mission. Go away. Okay, Chapter 264 First Floor on the Sea. Advertisement. Underwater Prison, Impel, the warden's room on the 4th underground floor. The office that should have been large and bright turned out to be very small and dark. In this dim environment, the office was empty, and only the faint sound of stomach tumbling echoed in the darkness. Magellan was sitting in the bathroom next to the office at the moment, his body curled up slightly, enduring the severe discomfort in his stomach like a knife. His originally resolute face was now occupied by pain, and fine beads of sweat oozed from his forehead. Because he is a poison fruit user, he only has a pitiful 4 hours of working time every day, and most of the rest of the time he has to stay on the toilet, fighting against the tortuous diarrhea. What a damn thing. Magellan cursed fiercely in his heart, and in order to teach an undisciplined criminal a lesson, he used his devil fruit ability. Although he was already used to diarrhea, the pain was still unbearable. Gululu. Just as he was about to lift up his pants, his stomach churned again, and he had no choice but to sit back on the toilet again. Hateful. Isn't Warden Magellan out yet? On the 1st floor of the sea, a group of jailers holding tridents were craning their heads and staring at the elevator on the 1st floor. Ha ha ha, isn't it just right not to come out? In this way, such news will definitely come out tomorrow. Marine General Black Tiger came to Impel Prison, but our warden was demoted because he was arrogant and absent from General Black Tiger's welcome ceremony. And the great Deputy Warden Hannibal led a group of men to welcome the General Black Tiger, and was appreciated by his old man, becoming the new warden. Oh ho ho ho, what a delightful news, advertisement. A guy with devil-like wings, a bare upper body, and a bulging belly like a devil was cheering wildly. When he turned around, his unique appearance was even more impressive. His appearance is as ferocious as Prajna, and he wears a yellow and green pharaoh's turban, which forms a strong contrast with the evil ghost's face, but is inexplicably harmonious. He is the Deputy Warden of Underwater Prison Impel, Hannibal. Cheer up, General Black Tiger is our hero in Impel. We must show the best of Impel. Put your chest out and tuck your belly in. Hannibal held the trident and excitedly directed all possible mistakes. Marines from other departments may not have any special impression of Karen, but the guards at Impel Prison are different. He attaches great importance to welcoming Karen, because it can be said that the entire Impel Prison owes Karen a favor. In the world's most severe prison, only one person has escaped from here over the years. He is the Golden Lion, Shiki. His escape was simply a shame for the entire Impel. It was precisely because of the Golden Lion's escape that Magellan was promoted from deputy warden to warden. Karen's defeat of the Golden Lion undoubtedly indirectly washed away Impel's shame. We must not make a mistake at this important moment. Hannibal's voice revealed a hint of nervousness and expectation. His eyes wandered around the jailers until they finally stopped on a young jailer. You are responsible for checking whether General Black Tiger's reception room is ready. Yes, Deputy Warden. Damn it, you gave me the word, Vice. He. After today I will be the warden. Hannibal fell into another moment of his own fantasy. Advertisement then, as if he discovered something, he walked briskly in front of the woman with an extremely hot figure. She wore a pink, navel-bearing, tight-fitting leather jacket. The bright color seemed to be burning with flames, and it closely fit her graceful figure, showing off every curve to its fullest. Hannibal said dissatisfied, "My dear little Sadie, could you please dress properly in case you make our hero unhappy? Wouldn't that affect my prospects of being promoted to warden?" Little Sadie glanced at him sideways, and then she stretched her body lazily. The few remaining pieces of clothing were looming like a veil under the bright light. The snow-white skin is like snow and jade, with a faint alluring luster, and the towering mountain peaks are ready to be seen, attracting the attention of all the men present. Yeah, but I don't think so. I heard that General Black Tiger is a perverted evil spirit. Maybe he will like my clothes very much. What do you think, Deputy Warden? Little Sadie stretched out her finger, pointed at Hannibal's strong chest, and said in a provocative tone. Hannibal's face immediately showed a look of intoxication. I think you are right, General Black Tiger will definitely like it very much. Idiot. As the only woman at the scene, Domino looked at this scene, crossed her arms and said coldly. Oh, Deputy Warden Domino, don't you like it? Little Sadie didn't care about Domino's words at all. She twisted her waist like a water snake and walked to Domino's side. Hannibal followed him like a pug, his eyes almost fixed on little Sadie. Domino's cheeks turned red without realizing it. No, boring guy. Little Sadie looked at this scene with satisfaction and whispered softly. If General Black Tiger can make a groan, it will definitely be the most beautiful sound in the world. Well, just thinking about it makes me excited. Chapter 265 Smell. Advertisement, General Black Tiger, you are here. As soon as Karen arrived at Impel Prison, Hannibal immediately came to Karen's side and nodded and bowed, without any arrogance as a deputy warden. I am the warden of Imperial Prison, Hambany, deputy. There was a jailer nearby who warned me carefully. Hannibal glared at the jailer and scratched his head in embarrassment. Yes, he is a deputy, but won't he become a regular soon? Karen frowned slightly. Shouldn't Luffy let the criminals in Impel go after more than 10 years when Hambany became the warden? But what's the matter with Hannibal swearing? Has the butterfly effect reached Impel Prison? Seeing Karen frowning, Hannibal thought that Karen was dissatisfied and unhappy that Magellan, the warden of Impel, did not personally greet him. He shouted excitedly. Our warden, Magellan, has arrogant attitude and disdains to greet the distinguished Black Tiger General. As you suggested, I fired him and made me the new warden. Karen's mouth twitched slightly, finally remembering Hannibal's character. Yeah, it fits the character very well. But why does this Black Tiger General sound more and more awkward? Although Cullen has been a general for several days, people who are familiar with him in Malinfondo call him Cullen, and those who are not familiar with him. Right before your eyes. This was the first time he was called by his code name. Somewhat uncomfortable. Ahem, no need to call me General Black Tiger. Karen coughed slightly and decided to correct the title. Hannibal's face lit up and he immediately changed his words, Brother Karen. Karen glanced at him sideways and interrupted. Just call me General. Hannibal. General. Karen nodded lightly and began to look at the surrounding environment. Advertisement. This is the first floor of the Impel Prison on the sea. Strictly speaking, this is not a prison. There are only prisoners on the 1st to 6th floors of the seabed. At this time, I don't know if it was to welcome Karen, but the entire first floor of the sea was extremely clean. In the distance, a group of jailers held several pirate-looking prisoners and pushed them into the steaming boiling water. With the plop sound of the prisoner falling into the water, the already boiling water boiled even more. The heart-rending screams of the prisoners echoed throughout the first floor of the sea. However, the soundproofing here is obviously pretty good, at least Karen didn't find it very noisy. Little Sadie looked at Karen, who looked curious, walked briskly to Karen, and said with a smile, Well, Black General, you should have heard the screams of the prisoners. How about it? The screams and so on, simply the most beautiful sound in the world. As she spoke, she deliberately covered her ears with her hands, pretending to listen carefully. The corners of Karen's mouth twitched slightly and he looked her up and down from beginning to end. Little Sadie turned around in a very cooperative manner and chuckled. How about it, General, are you interested in going to the room with me to discuss the most beautiful sounds in the world? Karen coughed lightly and shifted his attention. After coming to this world, he had known quite a few girls, but none as straightforward as Little Sadie. Little Sadie is holding the whip, eager to try it. The excitement in his eyes could hardly be suppressed. If it weren't for Karen's identity, she might have already been whipped. Don't be shy, everyone has a desire for pain, right? Little Sadie leaned close to Karen's ear and whispered softly, with a teasing light in her eyes. Karen's body trembled violently, and an indescribable feeling surged into his heart, making him feel uncomfortable all over. At this moment, he would rather start another dozens of rounds of fierce battle with the Golden Lion than stay here and deal with Lil Sadie. Could it be that you like my other side more? There was a trace of hesitation in Lil Sadie's eyes, and then she slowly stretched out her finger and lightly traced it from Karen's eyebrows all the way down to her chin. Then, her voice became low and seductive. If it's you, that's okay. Karen's throat was extremely dry and she was just about to speak. At this moment, Little Sadie suddenly let out a painful scream and quickly withdrew his palm. A hideous wound suddenly appeared in the palm of her hand, and blood flowed out gurglingly. Advertisement. She looked at Karen's shoulder with a horrified face, where Ji Yuhuonia was staring at her coldly. His gaze was like that of a king, exuding a suffocating pressure. It's appeared. It's the weapon of General Black Tiger. I've long heard that General Black Tiger has a weapon that uses the phantom beast species. That look is worthy of the fantasy beast type. Only the fantasy beast type is worthy of General Karen's strength. The jailer's discussion revealed excitement and excitement. Little Sadie also recovered from the pain just now, and then her cheeks turned extremely rosy, her legs were slightly crossed, and her voice trembled a little. Oh, this is how it feels. She slumped on the ground, looking at Karen's bird with fascination. Karen's head was full of black lines, and she secretly complained in her heart that your identity changed too quickly. Sorry, it doesn't like to be touched by outsiders. Karen came to Little Sadie and tried to pull her up from the ground. Guhunyao still looked at Little Sadie coldly, and the coldness in his eyes became even sharper. Little Sadie's whole body was agitated, and her trembling voice contained a hint of cry. Karen twitched her nose and suddenly felt an indescribable smell in the air. Then she calmly came to the only normal blonde beauty present. Although he knew early on that the guards at Impel Prison were somewhat abnormal, when he actually saw them, Karen was still shocked by their exaggerated temperament. Oh my god, are there any normal people in this place? Karen looked at Hannibal with a flattering look on his face, then at Little Sadie who was slumped on the ground and intoxicated with herself, and finally focused on all kinds of jailers with animal characteristics. Frowned slightly. Domino, who had witnessed the whole process, helplessly raised his forehead, straightened his eyes, and saluted Karen neatly. Hello, Lord Cullen, my name is Domino, and I am the deputy warden of Impel Prison. She is a slender woman with an elegant temperament. She wears a pair of reddish-brown sunglasses and has golden curly hair spread over her shoulders. She looks quite heroic. As for her outfit, she wore a brown jacket that fit tightly around her body, showing off her graceful figure, brown shorts that exposed her slender straight legs, a white shirt as an inner layer, and a dark red high top. The boots hugged her feet tightly, making her look tall and confident. It fits the image of a female jailer in Karen's mind. Karen reached out her hand and shook it lightly. Hello, I'm Karen. Chapter 266. Shiryu advertisement. Domino's cheeks blushed slightly, then quickly returned to normal, and said seriously. Welcome to Impel Prison. Our warden, Lord Magellan, is suffering from diarrhea due to fruit problems and cannot greet you. Please forgive me. As she spoke, she bowed deeply to Karen. But please rest assured that we at Impel Prison take your visit very seriously. If you feel there is any negligence, please point it out directly. She saluted again and her movements were very professional and capable in one go. Karen nodded and let out a long sigh of relief in his heart. Fortunately, there are finally normal people. Very good. Next, take me to visit Impel Prison, Deputy Warden Domino. As you command, Lord Cullen. It's finally done. In the darkness, Magellan stood up from the toilet, clutching his stomach. I hope it's too late. Turning on the lights in the office, Magellan stood under the lights and straightened his appearance slightly in front of himself in the mirror. His originally messy hair was now carefully combed neatly. Even the devil-like horns on the top of his head were polished by him. Looking at himself in the mirror, full of energy, the corners of his mouth could not help but rise slightly, revealing a satisfied smile. Yes, he is as handsome as the famous Black Tiger General. He said proudly in his heart. As the warden of Impel, he loves the place where he lives more than anyone else. He has long regarded Impel Prison as everything to him. Therefore, he also appreciates Karen who wiped out Impel's shame even more. The benefits of defeating the Golden Lion are far greater than Karen originally imagined. Magellan cleared his throat and walked towards the elevator on the 4th floor. In the red passage, a faint scream came from the depths of the passage. He frowned slightly, and an ominous premonition surged in his heart. He stopped, took back the foot that was about to step into the elevator, and listened quietly to the source of the scream. As he moved deeper into the passage step by step, the screams became more obvious. Ah, don't hit me. I know I was wrong and I won't dare to do it again. Magellan's eyes gradually became sharp, and he quickened his pace and walked in the direction of the screams. Advertisement, he. Are you wrong? Now that you know you were wrong, let lousy remember it in the next life. No. Don't, I am a devil fruit user, you can't kill me, Accompanied by the sound of a sharp knife cutting through the throat, the screams suddenly stopped. Look. Lord Warden, this is not good. It is stipulated above that we cannot kill devil fruit users easily. Huh? Are you questioning me? The smile on Shiryu's face reflected in the red prison was particularly sinister. In his hand he held a blade that shone with cold light, and bright red blood slowly dripped down the blade. Every time it falls to the ground, it will instantly turn into a ball of blood mist due to the high temperature. The sound of blood mists, bah, was heard, as if it was an accompaniment to this cruel drama. No, it's just that Warden Magellan has warned. Killing people with abilities rashly will bring us some unnecessary trouble. A jailer said tremblingly, with a look of fear on his face. Sometimes he would rather face the most vicious criminal in this prison than raise objections in front of his warden, but today was different. Warden Magellan specifically told him not to make any mistakes today, so he took the courage to do so. Alert guard Shiryu. Trouble? Shiryu sneered, in Impel, trouble is the norm. Don't forget where this is. We represent the side of justice, so what if we kill a few criminals? But, General Black Tiger came to Impel prison today, the warden, the jailer said hesitantly. Shiryu's tone suddenly increased, and he said angrily, what's the Black Tiger, the White Tiger? If Lousy hadn't been trapped in this damn prison, I could have taken care of the Golden Lion myself. He's just an old guy without crippled legs. Killing him really makes him a character. It's simply ridiculous. The jailer did not dare to speak anymore, for fear that he might accidentally anger the vicious man in front of him. Shiryu glanced at the corpse of the criminal lying on the ground and said happily, besides, this is the 4th level of scorching hell underground in Impel. Isn't it normal for a few criminals who overestimate their capabilities to disappear? As he spoke, he kicked the corpse into the sea of scalding fire. In less than 10 seconds, the body turned into a blackened remains, accompanied by a pungent burning smell, and a disgusting smell filled the air. Shiryu looked at all this with satisfaction, a cold smile on his lips. Look, this is Impel prison. I represent justice here. A just person will be forgiven no matter what excessive things he does. He turned around, his eyes like knives, and he scanned the surrounding jailers sharply. But, we have to abide by the rules here. The jailer was interrupted by Shiryu before he finished speaking. That's enough. Stop talking nonsense, advertisement. Shiryu shouted angrily, turning the blade in his hand, the light of the blade flashing, like a beast ready to kill at any time, staring at the jailer who dared to talk back. Either shut up, or be like him and become a dead soul under my sword. After saying that, he suddenly chuckled and said, forget it, why don't you make a choice, just be like him and go to hell. Before the jailer could react, a sharp sword light flashed from Shiryu's blade, and the huge sword light continued to enlarge in the jailer's eyes. Shiryu. At this moment, Magellan finally arrived. Before he could see clearly what happened, he hurriedly stood in front of the jailer. Bang! The sword light came into contact with Magellan's body and made a dull loud noise. Magellan's body was like a majestic mountain, standing there steadily, but the sword light stopped abruptly in front of him and could not go any further. Warden Magellan. The jailer slumped on the spot. Magellan glanced at the others, lifted him up, and turned to look at Shiryu. What are you doing? Shiryu! Magellan shouted angrily that he knew Shiryu had the habit of killing prisoners indiscriminately, but he did not expect that he would dare to kill his colleagues today. What to do? Of course, to teach the disobedient jailers a lesson. Shiryu responded disdainfully, with a sneer on his lips. Lesson? You are killing people. Magellan found it hard to accept that his former best friend had become like this. Once upon a time, he and Shiryu were known as the Iron Wall of Impel Down. But now, Shiryu feels strange to Magellan. This is a prison, not your slaughterhouse. Humph. I set the rules of the prison. Shiryu smiled coldly, I'm just cleaning up some useless garbage. Open your eyes and take a good look. He is a jailer, not the garbage you talk about. It doesn't matter. In my eyes, he is no different from trash. That's enough. Shiryu, you have crossed the line, especially today. Today is the day when the Black Tiger General comes to our Impel prison. Magellan's tone became more severe, with anger flashing in his eyes. General Black Tiger? Shiryu smiled coldly, his eyes full of disdain. What General Black Tiger? Just a young boy. Just in time, isn't he coming today? Just in time to see if he is qualified to become a general. Chapter 267 Poisonous, Advertisement, General Karen. This floor is the 4th floor under the sea. Domino walked out of the elevator with Karen as the elevator opened and closed. Behind them were Hannibal and a group of jailers who kept nodding and bowing. As for little Sadie, she did not follow. Karen was shocked by the environment as soon as she stepped out of the elevator. There was flowing hot lava everywhere, like a big river exuding hot breath, as if it was going to swallow up everything. The dark red liquid makes it difficult to tell whether it is lava or thick blood. There was a strong smell of blood in the air, and in this environment there was even more despair and cruelty. It is hard to imagine that there is such a stunning environment under the sea. What is even more terrifying is that Karen knows that the next layer is an extremely cold place that is completely opposite to this layer. This made Karen very suspicious that Impel Prison was not formed naturally, but was caused by man. For example, the world government has mastered rock berries and frozen fruits many years ago. The situation is similar to that of Punk Hassad in the future, except that it is closed here, so the climate here is much more outrageous than that of Punk Hassad. Domino stood respectfully beside Karen and introduced meticulously. Of course, as you can see, due to the environment here, we prefer to call it the scorching hell. She continued walking forward and introduced as she walked. Because this floor is in the center of Impel, our warden Magellan lives here. This floor not only has an office area, but also a kitchen and a granary. It can be said that this is our core area in Impel. Once something goes wrong here, there will be chaos in the entire Impel, but it is almost impossible to have a chaos here. Boom! Before she could finish her words, there was a sudden loud noise in the distance. The lava on the entire fourth floor of Impel became more boiling due to the sudden vibration, as if the temperature had risen a lot. The huge steaming waves kept rolling, like a purgatory on Earth. What's going on? Has anyone escaped from prison? Go and inform Warden Magellan. Activate Level 1 Combat Readiness State. Before Karen could react, the jailers following him immediately got busy and made quick judgments. Advertisement: This is the efficient response mechanism of Impel Prison. It is indeed known as the world's best prison, and its reaction speed is the best even in Malinfondo. Karen secretly admired in his heart. Deputy Warden Domino. Hannibal on the side also became serious. At this moment, he seemed to be a real warden. He said in a deep voice, "You take General Cullen to find Magellan. I will first go to the front to find out the situation." Domino immediately saluted. "Yes, Deputy Warden." Karen watched all this with interest and did not refuse. He knew that Impel would not cause any trouble before Wang Lufei arrived. After Hannibal gave the order, he led a group of jailers and ran out in the direction of the noise. Domino looked at Karen, who nodded. The two of them walked towards the warden's office together. Poison Dragon. Blood Feast. Accompanied by two shouts, a giant dragon with a strange purple color all over its body and a bright red sword made of blood collided in the air. The scales of the poisonous dragon flashed with cold light, as if they were condensed from the most evil poison in the world. The sword light was hot and violent, as if it was going to burn everything. When the purple poisonous dragon and the blood-red sword light finally collided together, a terrifying energy shock wave suddenly spread out with them as the center, and the ground was torn into huge cracks. The surrounding buildings collapsed and fell to the ground like fragile tofu, and strong air currents roared past, sucking everything around into the endless chaos. The poisonous dragon spewed out clouds of black poisonous gas, which intertwined and competed with the fiery power contained in the blood-red sword light. The two completely different breaths rubbed violently in the air, making a creepy hissing sound. "Shiryu!" Magellan roared angrily, and the purple poisonous dragon expanded instantly, and the huge force directly knocked Shiryu to the ground. Countless venom stuck to Shiryu's body. Shiryu's skin immediately turned purple, turning blue and red, looking extremely painful, but his expression was very fanatical. Advertisement: Magellan, you actually attacked me for a criminal? His expression was grim, like a demon in hell. They are criminals, but they are also criminals from Impel, and they are part of Impel. Besides, you not only execute criminals privately, but you also want to kill your colleagues. I don't think you can make any more mistakes, Shiryu. Magellan looked in pain, and the torment in his heart was no less than that of Shiryu. Colleagues? Ha 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 ha. They're just useless trash. They're useless here and will only get in the way? Shiryu gritted his teeth and struggled to stand up, the pain and excitement on his face intertwined. They are companions and comrades in arms, not trash. Magellan shouted angrily. Don't you understand, Magellan? Only the weak need companions. The truly strong always walk alone. Shiryu grabbed the hilt of the sword, the blood-red sword body glowing slightly, and a desperate aura emanated from the sword body, like an evil ghost from hell trying to climb up. Magellan's eyes narrowed slightly, and the armed color instantly wrapped around his entire body, and the purple poisonous dragon turned into deep purple. You are hopeless. Shiryu, I have to stop you, of course, because you are poisonous. Come on, Magellan. Since none of us can convince anyone, let us have a good fight. Whoever wins will be right. It seems that Lord Magellan has gone. Domino slowly turned on the dim light, which instantly illuminated the entire empty office. She looked at the empty office with a thoughtful look on her face. Karen unceremoniously moved a slightly worn chair, sat down directly and looked at the office carefully. It's really strange to say that this is obviously the office of the warden who controls the peak of power in Impel. Logically speaking, it should be spacious, bright and magnificent. But what appeared in front of them now was such a small and cramped appearance, which was completely inconsistent with Karen's inner prediction of the office environment that such an important position should have. He was about to ask Domino why the warden's office was so small when he suddenly felt his stomach churn. Hold the grass, this chair. Poisonous, chapter 268, that's mine. Advertisement. A cold snort slipped from Karen's cheek. He suppressed the rolling in his stomach and jumped up from the chair. Domino was awakened from her reverie by Karen's movements. Looking at Karen, who was holding back her composure, she asked with concern. What's wrong, General Cullen? Karen rolled her eyes and ignored Domino. I tried to use life return to calm down the discomfort in my stomach, but the effect was counterproductive. The turbulent feeling became stronger and stronger, and I couldn't use life return to calm it down and absorb it. Damn chair, damn Magellan. Karen cursed secretly in her mind, trying to maintain her appearance of decency and calmness. The breath was still lingering in Karen's abdomen, like a lion majesty swimming inside his body, trying to find a way out. This feeling made him more and more uncomfortable. His face gradually turned pale, and beads of sweat broke out on his forehead. This is definitely a huge crisis caused by Karen's arrival in this world. Domino finally realized what Karen was right about. When she saw the chair next to Karen, her expression immediately showed a sudden look. "Did you just sit on this chair?" Karen blinked and couldn't say a word. Domino immediately pushed open the small door on one side of the office. Without any hesitation, Karen's body suddenly disappeared. Shave. Bang. The door frame was violently closed by Karen, and a strange loud noise erupted. "It's like I'm hiding something." Domino stared at this scene dumbfounded. As the sound of running water from the bathroom faucet came out, she came back to her senses, and the corners of her mouth curved in an imperceptible arc. This general is really extraordinary, somewhat cute. Then, she turned around, her eyes fell on a corner of the office, walked slowly, and took out an iron box from the shelf above. Open. Empty. Advertisement. Her brows immediately furrowed with the word, "Chew on." Magellan's antidote was stored in this place, but now there was not a single one left. Finished? No, because of Magellan's poisonous fruit, there should be a lot of them stored here in order to prevent him from losing his chain during the due battle. Moreover, there are regular inspections by jailers. Logically speaking, as soon as a shortage is found, the medical room should be notified immediately to replenish it. But now, there are not even any weird ones left. She suddenly thought of the loud noise she had just gotten off the elevator, and the doubts in her heart kept growing like weeds. No, Warden Magellan is in danger. As we all know, the reason why Magellan is powerful is because he possesses a devil fruit, paramecia, a poisonous fruit that is comparable to logia. But when the toxicity loses its effect, can Magellan still maintain his authority in prison? This question was like a sharp knife, cutting through Domino's thoughts. Warden Shiryu must be notified, only he can deal with the prisoners on the 6th floor. Ha ha ha, how about it, Magellan, Lion Majesty without venom will be useless. Shiryu stuffed an antidote into his mouth and drank it with a proud look on his face. Did you secretly go to my office? Magellan here looked ugly. Steal it? Do I need it? Shiryu mocked. It's your office, why should I sneak around? Besides, after defeating you, doesn't that office belong to me? Damn it, Shiryu, you. Magellan was so angry that he could hardly speak. He took a deep breath, tried to suppress the anger in his heart, and said loudly, "You have expected this moment, and you are so anxious to target him? Me? Huh, there's no way. Who said today would be the day that little boy comes? I know you will definitely stop me. I just made the corresponding preparations," Shiryu said with a matter-of-fact look and sneered. "And, it turns out that I was right, you really turned against me because of him. Aren't we pushing forward the double wall of the city? Then we should deal with outsiders with me honestly? It's unfair, it's so unfair. I'm all working for the world government. Why should I stay in the dark impelled down city all my life, while he, just a young boy, has easily gained the respect of so many people?" Shiryu, who had been staying with the prisoner for a long time, poured out all the anger and jealousy in his heart in one breath. Magellan looked at Shiryu blankly, with an uncertain expression on his face. "Magellan, tell me, am I the warden or a criminal?" Advertisement. Shiryu's voice was mixed with a bit of despair and madness, as if all the accumulation had finally found an outlet. Magellan sighed. At this moment, neither the jailer nor the criminal could say anything. "Shiryu, you need treatment, you are affected." "Treat?" Shiryu seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. He pointed at Magellan's nose. "Do you think I'm sick?" "Ha ha ha, Magellan, don't you understand? It's not me who is sick, but the world. It's the world, it's also world government. If the criminal can be forgiven, how can justice be served to the victim? Only by cleansing the world of sins can the world become a better place. So, Magellan, join me, and with me." "Shut up." Before he could finish his words, he was interrupted by Magellan. He stared hard into Shiryu's eyes, as if he was trying to use this method to see through Shiryu's heart. After a while, Magellan spoke slowly and in a gloomy voice. "Shiryu, I understand you." It was precisely because of his understanding that he understood what kind of person Shiryu was. No matter how high-sounding he said it, in fact, he still had a murderous nature hidden in his heart. The so-called for justice in the world is just a reason he found for himself. If it was true as he said, what was his reason for shooting his comrades in arms? All this you said is just to satisfy your desire to kill. A trace of anger flashed across Shiryu's face, but he quickly regained his composure, with a sarcastic smile on his lips. "Killing? Do you think I am killing? No, Magellan, I am purifying." "Forget it, you don't understand even after I tell you. Look at how embarrassed you are. Since you don't want to join, then go to hell. Without venom, you can't possibly be my opponent. Don't worry, after you die, I will manage impel into a real hell." Magellan sneered. "Shiryu, did anyone tell you that Lion Majesty can still hurt people without its venom?" Shiryu also sneered. "But it's not fatal, is it?" As he spoke, he raised his neck and took out the last antidote from his pocket. Just when he opened the lid and was about to drink, a quick voice came. "Shut up, that's mine." Chapter 269. How about? Forget it. Advertisement. A loud shout made Shiryu and Magellan freeze on the spot. Then, Shiryu felt a strong wind blowing around him. When he reacted, he was horrified to find that the antidote in his hand had disappeared. On the other side, Karen held the antidote and handed it to Domino. He asked eagerly, "Is this it?" As soon as Domino stood firm, he quickly distinguished it carefully and then nodded. After hearing this, Karen drank the antidote in one gulp. As soon as the antidote hit my stomach, the rumbling feeling in my stomach gradually eased until it disappeared. Saved. Karen exhaled, wiped away his sweat, put away his armor, and restored his original powerful image. Here, Domino ran directly to Magellan and reported with a serious face. "Master Warden, all the antidotes in your office have disappeared. I suspect that some prisoners have secretly." After saying this, she looked at Shiryu, and all the doubts in her eyes disappeared. "Chief Warden," Shiryu said with a half smile but not a smile. "Chief Warden? Ha ha ha, but you just called me a prisoner." Domino opened his mouth to explain, but was interrupted by Shiryu. "It doesn't matter. Anyway, in your hearts, I am a prisoner. Isn't this just what you want?" Shiryu said sadly, staring directly at Domino's neck. Staring at this murderous look, Domino froze in place. "You should be like that idiot Hannibal, waiting for your boss to make mistakes. After all, only in this way can you keep climbing up." Shiryu. Magellan protected Domino in front of him and shouted again, "Hannibal is not a fool. He is a colleague and a comrade in arms." His voice was so loud that Hannibal, who had just arrived, was stunned. He looked at Magellan in a daze, his eyes wet. However, it only lasted a moment before he excitedly ran to Karen and said loudly, "General, a terrorist attack occurred as soon as you arrived in Impel. I recommend that our warden, Magellan, be punished immediately." Karen's mouth twitched slightly. The jailers behind Hannibal murmured quietly, "Advertisement, scumbag. Mean. General." Here, Shiryu was attracted by Hannibal's voice and gave the young marine his last antidote away. The more he looked, the more familiar he felt. "Are you the Black Tiger General, Karen?" Karen glanced sideways at Hannibal. The deputy warden was quite smart. Then, he stretched, looked at Shiryu, and smiled. "Yes, I am Karen." "Did you kill the Golden Lion?" Karen nodded. Shiryu sneered. "With the assistance of Garp?" Karen hesitated for a moment and nodded again. "Ha ha ha, I know how a young boy can defeat the Golden Lion." Shiryu looked up to the sky and laughed, and then an overwhelming murderous intention swept towards Karen. Karen was unmoved and just looked at him with interest. No one will give an ant a general understanding unless the ant actively provokes you. Upon seeing this, Magellan came directly between Karen and Shiryu. His veins were exposed, and he couldn't bear it anymore. Before Karen came, he wanted to spare Shiryu's behavior this time because he had been corrupted by his long-term contact with prisoners in Impel prison. He only planned to let him vent his dissatisfaction and send a team of good officers. The medical team cured his mental illness. But now he clearly felt the murderous intention he showed towards Domino just now. "Shiryu, don't be rude to General Karen, he is our hero in Impel." He intended to give one last exhortation. "What kind of hero is it? Does defeating the Golden Lion make you a hero?" Shiryu said dismissively. "Besides, it was with the assistance of Lieutenant General Garp. Who knows if it was because of his own strength, but he was just a connection." "You?" Magellan couldn't bear it anymore. His body began to be wrapped in armed colors, and a terrifying coercion spread from his body. This time, he planned to take action for real. Lion Majesty, who has no venom, also has fangs, which can still be deadly. Advertisement. At this moment, Karen said with great interest. "You seem very dissatisfied." Then, he looked directly at Magellan and chuckled. "Warden Magellan, why don't you give me a chance? I also want to see how strong our warden is." Magellan was stunned and looked at Karen. He wanted to refuse but saw the unbreakable emotion in Karen's eyes. It's not that Karen had to make this news, but that it was within Karen's plan to fight the masters from Impel prison when he had the opportunity. Although Sengoku agreed to Karen taking away Douglas Bullet for Shichibukai reasons, he obviously wanted to show Impel that he could control Douglas Bullet. Only in this way could Magellan release him. His initial plan was to fight Magellan, but now, isn't this a good opportunity? Although the opponent is not Magellan, but, as long as it is shocking enough, wouldn't it be fine? All right. Magellan looked at Karen with worried eyes. After sighing, he put away his weapons and stared directly at Shiryu, just in case he could intervene if an uncontrollable situation occurred later. A sneer appeared at the corner of Shiryu's lips. "It seems that you are really an ignorant boy. In this case, killing you will only mean you are unlucky." Karen smiled softly and made no rebuttal. Zhangfeng suddenly unsheathed his sword, and the sharp sword drew an elegant arc in the air. The speaker hidden deep in Karen's pocket sounded quietly, accompanied by an exciting melody. Even Karen's already well-proportioned figure became straighter at this moment. This was because he was adjusting his physical condition with the return of life. At this moment, his aura reached its peak. Every cell in his body seemed to be mobilized for this moment, and his strength, speed, and perception all reached their peak. He can clearly perceive every tiny change in his body, and even every movement in the air and every tiny sound cannot escape the capture of his ears and senses. His heartbeat matched perfectly with the rhythm around him. standing there, he seemed to be the center of the entire space. His aura is so powerful that almost everything else cannot match it. Even time and space seem to be bound by this invisible force. Domino and Hannibal's eyes met, and each could see the unconcealable panic and cold sweat on the other's face. Even Magellan's breathing became cautious unconsciously. I was afraid that I might accidentally anger this young man who was smiling just a second ago. In the face of that powerful aura, Shiryu's sneer gradually disappeared, replaced by deep solemnity and uneasiness. The threat of death forced him to suppress all his arrogance, and his eyes became calmer and clearer. That's because only by being clear-headed and calm can you maintain a slim chance of survival in the face of this deadly threat. Ahem, how about? Forget it. Chapter 270. My stomach hurts, 2 in 1. Advertisement. He wanted to say something else, but a wave of Conqueror's dominance suddenly spread like a flood. This coercion not only came from Karen's body, but was transmitted from his soul and his breath. It was devastating and instantly flooded the entire Impel prison. The air seemed to be solidified, and time seemed to be suspended. All living creatures were out of breath at this moment, and even the smallest sound became extremely silent. This is just the overflow, but in the center of Karen, as the Conqueror's face of Karen, Shiryu only feels that he is being held tightly by a pair of invisible big hands, and he can't even move a step. To be precise, he had lost the idea of moving. His mind went blank and he almost fainted. The breath of despair spread in Shiryu's body, and the breath of death enveloped his whole body. No, I was wrong. Under the threat of death, Shiryu burst out with an unprecedented desire to survive, and his heartbeat that had almost stagnated suddenly began to beat violently. But he still couldn't move. His whole figure seemed to be frozen in place, and fear eroded every inch of his nerves. At the critical moment of his life, Shiryu suddenly clenched the famous sword in his hand, Thunderstorm. This is his most trusted tool and his only companion. However, at this time, the thunderstorm seemed extremely heavy in Shiryu's hands, as if to ironize that he had lost even the last bit of resistance. God avoids! Karen shouted loudly and waved the Zhangfeng in his hand suddenly. With the blessing of unparalleled knowledge, his movements are like thunder breaking through the darkness, fast, deadly and unstoppable. The sword edge cut through the air, across Shiryu's blade, across Shiryu's body, and across the building above him. There was no loud noise, only a narrow and weak light. It was projected from the underwater prison. The scorching hell that had never seen the sun all day long received a ray of light. The light reflected on Karen and Shiryu's faces like a huge sword mark. Thump! Shiryu sat slumped on the spot, his eyes empty and blank. There was no flame of fighting, only endless despair and deep exhaustion. His chest rose and fell violently. Although the threat of life and death had temporarily disappeared, the fear rising from the depths of his bones still spread through every inch of his skin. It's just a discussion, isn't it? Karen looked down at Shiryu with a smile on his face, completely different from the terrifying strong man who exuded powerful conquerors just now. He didn't kill Shiryu. Regardless, Shiryu is still Impel's warden. He came to Impel as a guest and to borrow someone, not to cause trouble. Just let Magellan see that he has the ability to control Douglas Bullet. However, this blow was indeed more powerful than he imagined. Karen raised his head, looked at the beam of light and scratched his head. I shouldn't need to compensate you. Everyone ignored him. They were still immersed in the conquerors that destroyed everything. Karen frowned slightly, turned around and coughed lightly, waking Magellan out of silence. Magellan looked at Karen blankly. Karen had no choice but to repeat, I'm sorry, the force was a little too strong. No need to compensate. Magellan's mouth twitched slightly. Do you call this a slight? No. No need. No need? It wasn't until he walked to Shiryu that he discovered the ferocious sword mark. Only standing here could he understand how amazing Karen's blow was. This is Impel, the world's largest prison, and it was so easily torn open by Karen? Karen was caught in Impel, so can the prison known as the world's strongest prison be able to imprison him? The idea suddenly crossed Magellan's mind, but he soon realized how ridiculous it was. Then he put away this idea and shook his head secretly. How is this possible? Karen is a general of Marine headquarters. It's one of our own. Ahem. Seeing the doubts and hesitation in Magellan's eyes, Karen repeated slightly impatiently, no compensation is required, it should be fine, right? Magellan frowned, still unable to recover from the shock. He swallowed his saliva and looked at Karen with complicated eyes. Is the general so scary? He thinks that his strength is already the best in the world. If it weren't for the side effect of diarrhea, he felt that with his strength after going out, he would be at the level of a general. But looking at Karen today, he suddenly wasn't so confident. Advertisement Karen naturally didn't know what he was thinking, and he actually had a good impression of Magellan. This is a ruthless man who can defeat the 3 emperors and several Shichibukai by himself. He also has a serious and responsible personality. If he hadn't had diarrhea, he would have really wanted to abduct the warden with him. Of course, it's just a thought. Karen. You. Magellan's voice trembled slightly. You just. That blow. Karen turned around lazily, her smile still gentle and unhurried. As you can see, I didn't hurt Shiryu. He's still alive. He was just slightly shaken. It shouldn't be a serious problem. Magellan looked at Shiryu, who was slightly shaken, and his whole body felt bad. At this time, Shiryu looked like he had been spoiled. Every part of his body was trembling violently. Even his famous sword Leiyu was thrown to the ground carelessly. The originally blood-red blade became much duller, losing the special color of the famous sword. Magellan frowned and looked at Shiryu, feeling a chill in his heart. Maybe this is not bad, even if it is his punishment. It's just that I didn't control the intensity well. Karen added, his eyes drifting to the sword mark not far away. Ahem, it doesn't matter. I will apply for a subsidy from above for this matter. Magellan cleared his throat and helped Shiryu up, while looking behind Karen. There, the several jailers who were standing all fainted under the influence of Karen's domineering energy. Including Domino. At this time, the only ones who remained conscious, besides Karen and Magellan, were Hannibal. The future warden was looking at everything around him blankly. It was not until Magellan came to him with Shiryu that he recovered from his dazed state. This, he did this for a long time, and no other notes came out of his mouth. Magellan rolled his eyes at him, threw Shiryu towards him, and said loudly. You take him to the medical room first. Hannibal took Shiryu blankly, looked at Magellan, and asked. And you? Magellan looked at the messy scene and couldn't help but feel. My stomach hurts, ouch. Then what should they do? Hannibal pointed blankly at Domino and the jailer beside him. This is a place as hot as purgatory. If they ignore them and turn around to leave, they will most likely be mercilessly devoured by the raging fire. Thinking of this, he left Shiryu behind without hesitation and ran towards the depths of the prison like an arrow from a string. Ouch. What are you doing? Magellan held his stomach with both hands, his face full of pain, as if millions of ants were gnawing at his internal organs. Do you need my help? Karen chuckled and said, after all, he was responsible for this situation. Magellan smiled bitterly and replied, that's natural, let's wake them up first. What the hell is Hannibal doing? While muttering, he moved with difficulty, the pain on his face getting stronger. Wake up. He held a jailer with both hands and kept shaking him, but the jailer was like a sleeping baby, unresponsive. Karen helped Domino up. She was still in a coma at this time. In this unbearably hot environment, her cheeks were as red as a ripe apple, which was particularly cute. Karen stared at her cheek without any hesitation. Crack. He slapped it with a big mouth. Needless to say, it feels pretty good. It's not that Karen doesn't care about her, it's just more efficient this way. Sure enough, the effect was immediate, and Domino woke up from his coma with a ying-ning sound. Domino opened her eyes drowsily, still a little confused, but soon the surrounding temperature made her wake up. She sat up suddenly and looked around the surrounding environment. What happened? She frowned slightly, and soon, memories came to her like a tide. Advertisement, I remember. I was watching Cullen and the Warden fight, and then, the Conquerors. Domino looked at Karen, her eyes full of shock. Just her momentum stunned her. How terrifying. Is this the gold content of a general? Just wake up. Karen smiled and said in a calm tone, as if the violent behavior just now had nothing to do with him. Domino stood up from the ground. Thank you for waking me up. Although her tone was still serious, Karen felt that there was something extra in her eyes, but Karen didn't care. Wake them up first. Karen pointed to the unconscious guards. Domino's cheeks were still flushed. She took a deep look at Karen, and then quickly ran to the jailers to wake them up. Here, Magellan is still shaking the jailers. But the effect was minimal, so he had no choice but to imitate Karen's method of waking up Domino and slap the jailers in the face. The jailer woke up immediately after suffering the pain. Then, his red cheeks instantly turned black and purple, and he fainted again. Magellan stared blankly at his hands, feeling a sense of loss. He is a poisonous person, and his whole body is full of toxins. Even wearing gloves cannot resist the toxins emanating from his body. Normal contact with subordinates is from a distance, and even visitors must wear gas masks in advance. Damn. Domino looked at him and instantly understood what was happening. Master Warden, just leave this to me. Magellan stood up with an ugly face, and the tumbling in his stomach seemed to be reduced a lot because of this loss. At this moment, Hannibal ran back from afar like a strong wind. He shouted breathlessly, it's bad, all the prisoners on the 4th floor are unconscious. Magellan was stunned, and then he realized why Hannibal was running into the depths alone. It turned out that he was going to confirm the situation. Yes, although the prisoner on the 4th floor is already a famous figure in the outside world. But just now, even Deputy Warden Domino was intimidated by Karen's conquerors, let alone the prisoners who were already being tortured. There was a hint of panic on Magellan's face. You must know that this 4th floor is no better than the other floors. If the temperature here stays in one place for a long time, it is very likely that these prisoners will be steamed. The death of a prisoner is not a big deal in Impel, but if all the prisoners on the 4th floor are dead, then even he can't bear this responsibility. He had no choice but to die as an apology. Quickly notify the guards on other floors to come to the 4th floor and wake up all the prisoners here. Yes. Hannibal responded while panting, and turned around to convey the order to the jailers on other floors. Seeing that things were getting more difficult, Magellan quickly took out the walkie-talkie in his hand and shouted in a hoarse voice. Guards on all floors must gather on the 4th floor immediately. Karen touched his nose and felt a little embarrassed. Although this was just an unintentional move on his part, it was no surprise that he was the culprit of this incident. Thinking of this, he hesitated because he had a way, but he was not sure whether it would succeed. That's why he acquired a very useless ability, the Advertising Master. This is the 5th ability he has acquired. Compared with other abilities, it has almost no effect on Karen. It simply forces everyone within range of his voice to respond to his next sentence. Although it is also a rule system, it does not directly affect the physical or mental level like other rule systems. The ability of the Advertising Master is more like a command system. Karen wasn't sure if it would work, but he decided to try it anyway. In order to ensure that his voice was transmitted to the entire scorching hell, he turned the color of sight and hearing to the extreme, and his voice was covered with the power of color of sight and hearing. No gifts for the holidays this year. As soon as he finished speaking, the surrounding air seemed to be shaken by an invisible wave. Although Karen's voice was not loud, the forced perception from the ability was like a thunderous blow, violently impacting everyone's consciousness. Immediately afterwards, all corners of the entire scorching hell that were covered by Karen's sight and color, and all living beings who were able to speak, began to respond to Karen's advertisement. Only melatonin is required to receive gifts. Throughout the prison, including Magellan and others who were awake, the voices of countless prisoners and jailers rang out, like a century-old chorus. Everyone responded to Karen's advertisement, without realizing it. No matter where they were, the reverberation of the sound almost shook the entire scorching hell. It was precisely because of this sound that resounded throughout the world that the jailers who were still sleeping, soundly, sat up from the ground one by one. Earthquake. Idiot, this is the bottom of the sea. Should it be vibrations on the bottom of the sea? No, this is like a sound? Where did it come from? Could it be that someone is causing trouble in prison? Chapter 271. Could it be you? Advertisement. The surrounding jailers stood up one after another, staring at each other, unable to understand why there was such a strong reaction. It is obvious that the entire Impel prison is firmly imprisoned on the bottom of the sea and is surrounded by endless seawater in all directions. It is almost impossible for conventional vibrations to be transmitted here, but the vibration just now is extremely real. Before they could figure out what happened, Karen, who saw the effect, activated the Advertising Master's ability again just in case. Travel to China. I think it works. Fu Yanji. Wash to be healthier. There's Tide. No stains. Backgammon reading machine. I don't know where to click. So, next, in Karen's sentence, the jailer and the prisoner's sentence. The entire Impel prison fell into unprecedented chaos. Everyone was crazily repeating slogans they couldn't understand without realizing it, as if the whole prison was being swept by a strange trend. What's going on? My heart is soaring. Domino covered his ears while responding to Karen's advertisement. The confused-looking prisoners and guards around her made her head feel a little swollen. At this moment, she also felt confused and overwhelmed like never before. Magellan also looked confused, but through the surrounding environment and Karen, who was incompatible with everything around him, he instantly figured out what happened. It's General Karen's Yan fruit. Find Lan Shang in Shandong, China. Domino also remembered Karen's information. His files and information were written about the speaker. I see. If you didn't tell me, I would have forgotten that General Karen is also a devil fruit user like you. Michelle Ice City is sweet. What should I do now? No, it's your Yida. Hannibal also came over. Magellan glanced at him and said loudly, look at the condition of those prisoners. A thread of throat. Advertisement. Hannibal nodded and ran towards the distant passage again, shouting as he ran. Because I need syrup urgently. With the relay of advertisements again and again, order in the prison gradually began to be restored. At least the comatose jailers finally woke up. Those prisoners who fell due to Cullen's conquerors also woke up in the flood of advertising sound waves. General Cullen, that's enough. Hurry up and use your abilities. Use Stanley to fertilize. After receiving the news that Hannibal's prisoners were particularly awake, Magellan immediately shouted. He was afraid that if he continued shouting, the entire Impel would collapse due to the vibration of the sound. Karen touched his nose, feeling a little unfinished. This was the most exciting time he had used this ability since he obtained it. After all, the principle of the Advertising Master ability does not conform to the scope of conventional combat abilities at all, and is more like a spoof-level prank. However, as he expected, this ability really allowed all the prisoners and guards in the prison to respond to his advertisement, whether they were awake or comatose. Fortunately, the effect of advertising seems to be really effective. Karen whispered to herself, it's just a physical effect. Magellan wiped the cold sweat from his face, and his abdomen, which had gradually calmed down, was aching again. Ahem, Hannibal, take someone to check the entire Impel prisoner situation from beginning to end, especially the 4th floor. Domino, please take Karen around here first. After ordering his men, he looked at Karen and said helplessly, General Karen, I'm sorry for my poor hospitality, but I have to deal with it. Karen nodded, with a calm face. Of course, I understand. You can go deal with your affairs first. Magellan glanced at Domino and then ran back to his office as fast as he could. Let's go. Karen walked towards Domino, who had returned to his original gentle appearance. But in Domino's heart, Karen's strong Yamato ability has been deeply imprinted in her heart. Okay, let's call the next level Freezing Hell. At the same time, Eternal Hell. The sound of passionate advertisements entered this huge prison that seemed to have been forgotten by time. It adds a touch of harshness and impetuousness to the originally dark and immersive atmosphere. Advertisement. The sound echoed repeatedly in this endless dark space, like invisible chains, entangled in the thoughts of every trapped person. What is this sound? The jailers guarding Eternal Hell are all awakened animal devil fruits, and they prefer to maintain animal forms than other animal devil fruit abilities. It seems to be coming from the floor above. It doesn't matter, as long as the 6th floor is not in chaos. Yes, as long as there are no problems on the 6th floor. In a certain prison in the darkness, a huge shadow sat up. Under the dim light, it was faintly visible that the difference between him and other prisoners was that he was not wearing a prison uniform, but instead a long white and dark brown fur coat. There are 2 white horns attached to the head through black metal plates, which look very similar to cow horns. The King of Evil, Avalo Pizarro. It sounds like something happened on the floor above us, cat. In the silent atmosphere, his voice was particularly obvious. Ahaha. Pizarro, what do you mean? Do you want to take the opportunity to go out? As soon as his voice sounded, in another prison next to him, a female voice with a long nose, like a witch, joked. Wakazuki Hunter. Katrine Demai. Avalo Pizarro's eyes shone with a deep light in the darkness, and his fingers slightly rubbed the edge of his coat, seeming to be deep in thought. You know, Katrine, his voice was low and hoarse, I've been here long enough, meow. Ahaha. Who is not? Katrine's voice came again, with a hint of despair, but you should know where this is, and just a little abnormal noise is definitely not a good time. A good time, meow? Avaro asked softly, with a sneer on his lips, when the golden lion left here, you said it was not a good time, meow. He succeeded. You don't know how much I regret that I didn't have the courage to leave with the golden lion, meow. Katrine was silent, and after a while, she spoke again, but you should know that the golden lion is dead and died outside. Maybe our choice is correct. What do you know? Katrine, death is not scary, it's the peace here that scares me. Avaro's voice was trembling. I admit that you were right, but I always feel that this is not a good time. I only live once, and I would rather wait in peace. Avaro didn't speak anymore. He stared at the darkness ahead, his eyes gradually becoming deeper. On the other side, Doflamingo listened quietly to the exchanges between the 2 people, his eyes shining with a strange light. He always felt that he had seen this kind of sound somewhere. Could it be you, Ba? Chapter 272 Eternal Hell Advertisement. Karen, this is the entrance to the 6th level of Eternal Hell. Magellan pointed to a stone doorway extending downwards, his tone calm and calm. The stone door was very thick and heavy, and the whole body was made of a kind of stone. Only the door handle was made of a wooden material that Karen had never seen before. Of course, this stone is also made of seafloor stone. It is as black as ink and exudes a depressing atmosphere. Sea Tower stone can not only effectively isolate the power of demons, but also curb the souls who want to escape from hell. Karen stood in front of the door, tilting his head to look at the bird sitting on his shoulder. At this time, the bird's feathers reflected a cold luster in the dim light, its eyes flickered slightly, its wings vibrated gently, and made a slight rustling sound. It was obviously the smell of seafloor stone that made it feel a little uncomfortable. Karen's mind moved, and the bird flew into the air, transforming into its original form of Zhang Feng. Seafloor stone will make the person with abilities weak and powerless. But for Zhang Feng, who is a weapon in itself, the seafloor stone can only prevent it from maintaining the form of a bird, and its own material will not be affected in any way. Very well, let's go to the gate of opening. Karen, who carried Zhang Feng behind his back, nodded to Magellan. Magellan was a little hesitant. After dealing with Shiryu's matter, Karen had already told him the purpose of coming here. Although there was a document from Marine Fleet Admiral, Magellan still felt that Karen was a bit risky. Karen saw Magellan's hesitation, his eyes narrowed slightly, and he said in a deep voice. Don't worry, I will definitely be able to control him. Later, he added again, or do you think I'm not strong enough? Magellan's mouth twitched slightly and he smiled bitterly and said, I don't dare, I have already seen your strength, but he is a vicious criminal after all. I'm worried. Magellan's voice echoed in the silent underground tunnel, and he looked at Karen with a little worry. Although Karen's strength is unquestionable, what he has to face is a criminal who needs to launch a buster call to subdue him. Once he is allowed to return to the sea, the consequences will be beyond his ability to bear. Karen's eyes remained calm. He took a step forward and said in a deep voice. Advertisement, I understand your concerns, but I have my own judgment. I will subdue him, and he will be used by me. Magellan took a deep look at Karen, then nodded, took out a small metal key from his arms, inserted the key into the keyhole of the doorknob, and turned it a few times. With a slight, click, sound, the door slowly opened. Inside the door, the dark passage seemed to have no end, and there was a sense of oppression in the air, as if there were countless pairs of eyes watching their every move from the darkness. Let's go. Karen withdrew her gaze, turned around and walked into the door. Magellan immediately led the way for Karen. The door slammed shut behind them with a dull sound. The two of them entered this endless darkness together. The footsteps of Karen and Magellan were particularly abrupt in the silent passage. The air is getting duller, as if every breath can make people feel an invisible pressure, which makes the chest feel tight. As it goes deeper and deeper, the smell of decay, dampness and putrefaction becomes more pungent. The smell was so strong that even Karen couldn't help but frown slightly. This is eternal hell, depressing and dull. The stench-filled environment is full of death and despair. Every step was like stepping into an endless abyss, and the surrounding darkness made it impossible to distinguish the flow of time and space. This is the most powerful prison for criminals. Almost all the evildoers who have committed heinous crimes will be sent to this place, and the most terrifying one is the one who is called the Devil's Descendant, and the successor of Ghost, Douglas Bullet. Magellan followed closely behind, frowning. As the warden of Impel, he did not show too much fear, but the invisible pressure also made him feel a little uncomfortable. As Magellan lights the oil lamp in eternal hell, the faint flame of the oil lamp illuminated the surrounding space, dispelling the original feeling of coldness and dampness. Oh ho ho ho. Why is Magellan here again? It seems that the sea is really uneasy. A criminal without limbs has just been sent in, and he is about to send it again. Marine? Advertisement, ha ha ha. First didn't expect Marine to become a criminal one day. Hey, Magellan, bring that Marine to me and I will take good care of him. Hurry up and give Lousy some food, otherwise Lousy will eat all the jailers here. As soon as the oil lamp was lit, these sounds were like whispers from the abyss, penetrating the narrow passage and seeming to be wandering in the air. They are mixed with ridicule, resentment and madness, like a curse and provocation to everyone. Shut up! Magellan roared angrily, exuding the majesty of a warden. But the prisoners here were not frightened at all by Magellan's angry shouts, but instead burst into laughter. The angry curses, weird whispers, and hoarse laughter of countless criminals filled the air and echoed endlessly. Every sound carries a deep despair and madness, venting their hatred for the world. Who do you think you are? You're just a lackey of the world government. If I weren't bound by this damn sea tower stone, do you think you are my opponent? Magellan, you Marines are just slaves of this world. Do you think you can dictate here? You are nothing more than a corrupt piece of shit? Ha ha ha, warden. Ridiculous. Haven't you realized that you have become a prisoner a long time ago? You are more miserable than anyone else. At least we were imprisoned because we did evil things, and you, Magellan, an upright Marine, actually want to stay with us criminals in this damn place forever. Don't you think you are more pathetic than us? Magellan's steps paused slightly, but he quickly regained his composure. He stopped, took a deep breath, and whispered. You people are not worth my time to argue with you. Ha 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 ha. Do you not want to argue, or do you think what we said is correct? Magellan was so angry that he laughed. He turned around, stared at the criminals, and smiled contemptuously. At least I'm on the outside and you're on the inside. And don't forget, I am a poisonous person. If you dare to say nonsense to me again, I will let you taste what it is like to be infected by the virus. As he spoke, the toxins in his body began to roll over, and strips of lion majesty began to spread into the prison like a tide. If you don't believe it, you can try it. I do what I say. Chapter 273 Ba 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 Ba. Advertisement. After these words, the prisoners all calmed down. All taunts, insults and curses ceased. Sure enough, the most effective way to deal with criminals is threats and oppression. None of them are fools, and at most they are just talking about it. Magellan's ability is no joke. Once the lion majesty-like toxin is released, it can not only paralyze the human body, but also cause people to suffer extreme pain. That kind of pain makes many prisoners prefer to endure endless confinement. There was dead silence in the air, and all the prisoners did not dare to make any more provocations. They knew that Magellan could really do it. However, this calm did not last long. Although they would not provoke Magellan, they aimed their brows at Karen, who came with Magellan. This little Marine guy seems to be easier to bully. Gia Gia Gia, Marine, you look so tender and tender, you must be delicious. Eat, stupid. What a waste. Of course, let him and I have fun, meow. Shut up, he is not a criminal, he is our Marine General, Black Tiger Karen. Magellan roared angrily, and the purple lion majesty on his body was about to move. He swore that as long as these people dared to speak one more word, he would give them a taste of poison without mercy. Admiral. Ha 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 ha. Is there no one in Marine anymore? You want to let a brat who is still young? Before the prisoner could finish speaking, the purple lion majesty condensed by toxins sprang out in an instant, completely entangling the prisoner. The purple lion majesty quickly invaded his body with a suffocating stench and aura of corruption, causing every inch of his skin to burn in pain. The prisoner screamed in pain, his body twisted, his muscles spasmed, and his face was twisted like an evil ghost from hell. Well, the prisoner's voice was rapid and broken, and he let out a wailing cry. His eyes were empty, and then he fainted. Karen watched all this coldly, his eyes fixed on the prisoner who just said he wanted to have fun with him. He has never been an easy person to talk to when it comes to scumbag pirates. Now that someone is targeting him, he doesn't mind showing his fangs to these damn prisoners. Boom! An invisible sense of oppression suddenly erupted, and the air seemed to be torn apart by some extremely powerful force. The criminals around them suddenly felt an irresistible sense of oppression, as if the entire space was collapsing and twisting wantonly as they breathed. That sense of oppression did not come from Magellan's poison, but from Karen. Baba. Conquerors. Advertisement. Another conqueror's strongman appears in Marine. I'm afraid even that guy hasn't reached this level of richness. Damn it, I believe he is a general. I'm tired of hearing your words. Karen said coldly. His voice was not loud, but it seemed to have the power of thunder, shaking the whole prison. The laughter of the criminals around them stopped abruptly. However, they are all well-informed big shots. Conquerors only lets them know that Karen is not easy to mess with, but it is not enough to make them afraid. Karen's aura was like a big invisible net, covering everyone instantly. You want to have some fun with me? Karen stopped next to the prisoner who just said he wanted to have fun with him. His voice was low and cold, and he ordered to Magellan. Magellan, open the prison and let me see the level of criminals imprisoned in eternal hell. Karen planned to teach the scumbags here a lesson, especially the rude guy. You are the only one who is called the king of evil government. Magellan hesitated, but thinking that since Pizarro was still bound by sea tower stone shackles, there should be no problem, and finally slowly opened the prison under Karen's cold eyes. This way. Avalo Pizarro not only had no fear, but looked excitedly at the open prison. His eyes were red, and he didn't expect that the Marine kid would dare to let Magellan open his cell just by provoking him. He is indeed a young brat. Can just a random provocation irritate him? How arrogant is this Marine kid? He doesn't really think that with conquerors, he is qualified to challenge his former maritime overlord. His eyes narrowed slightly, and his desire to escape from Impel prison became more intense. Pizarro stuck out his tongue and licked it slowly, but did not pounce on it. He still has sea tower stone shackles around his neck. As long as he tricks the kid in front of him to open the shackles on his body, he will have the confidence to break this cage and use his ability to release more criminals. As long as he releases enough criminals, even if not even Magellan could stop them. At that time, he can escape from the damn Impel prison together with these inmates. Thinking of this, he winked at Catherine Demai beside him. Catherine Demai saw what Pizarro was thinking and nodded slowly. Ha 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 ha, kid, I admit that you have some courage, but I think your courage comes from the damn sea tower stone shackles, meow. Pizarro pointed to the shackles around his neck with a dismissive tone. Advertisement, if it weren't for these shackles, I would have torn you into pieces, meow. All the prisoners stared at Karen and Pizarro's every move, and they were equally excited, as if they had seen freedom waving to them. Even the burly man deep in the prison stopped exercising and looked at Karen and Pizarro with interest. Next door to him, Doflamingo looked at Karen coldly, with hatred and anger that could hardly be suppressed. You are strong again. Karen, angry voices sounded in his heart, and his heartbeat accelerated. He wished that Pizarro could tear Karen's disgusting face to pieces. Even though he knew it was almost impossible, but he couldn't help but start to fantasize. Even if there was only a slight possibility, it would be enough for him to bet everything. It was all thanks to Karen that he ended up where he was today. How can you not hate it? Bullet was keenly aware of Doflamingo's changes. He grinned. You know that Marine brat? Doflamingo was stunned and looked at Bullet. This was the first time he heard the voice of his neighbor. In his impression, this man with explosive muscles was undergoing high-intensity basic training in prison almost every day. I also tried to ask him about some topics, but the man was always silent. It seemed that in his world, getting stronger was the most important thing. Doflamingo adjusted his breathing and maintained his posture. Of course, the reason why I ended up like this is because of him. Ha ha ha, so this little Marine guy is very strong? Bullet stared at Karen excitedly. The Conqueror's aura just now ignited his fighting spirit. That power was so familiar. Doflamingo was silent for a while. His own experience forced him to admit that Karen was very powerful, otherwise wouldn't it mean that he was weak? Of course, otherwise how could I be here? You know the Golden Lion. He is a super strong man who can kill the Golden Lion easily. Even I. He paused and continued. I tried my best, but I could barely fight him for more than 100 moves. If I hadn't been exhausted in the end, he would have lost. Bullet was stunned and looked Doflamingo up and down. He had no idea that the limbless guy next to him could be so powerful. He had seen the strength of the Golden Lion, and the courage of the Golden Lion was something that even his former captain did not dare to say. Easy to kill instantly, but... Thinking of this, he looked at Doflamingo suspiciously. You don't look very strong, do you? Doflamingo, I. Bah, Chapter 274 almost. Advertisement. Does the majestic Marine General only bully criminals who are bound by sea tower stones? Catherine Deem said in a mocking tone. The other criminals around also started making noises. Haha, General Marine is nothing more than that, and he actually takes out his anger on us who are bound by the sea tower stone. Even if you teach Pizarro a lesson, what will happen? If you don't dare to release the restraints on him, even if you win, it will still be a weak victory. If you have the guts to challenge us, don't just use these dirty methods. Pizarro spread his arms like a leader, and he shouted, "Ha ha ha, the so-called Marine is just a group of cowardly people. They don't dare to confront each other head-on. They only use insidious means to fight more. That's all, meow." Pizarro's ridicule echoed in the prison, and he looked at Karen with provocative eyes. "If you have the ability, confront me openly and take off the sea tower stone shackles on my body, meow." Karen stood there, staring coldly at these provocative criminals. Although his face was expressionless, the sense of oppression still made the surrounding air heavy. His eyes slowly swept over the criminals whose mouths were still flying around. There was no trace of mercy in his eyes, only deep indifference and disdain. "How about it, Marine brat, do you dare meow?" Pizarro still spoke provocatively. "If you don't dare, don't waste my time here, go home and drink milk, meow." "Justice? Here." Magellan looked at Karen anxiously, fearing that Karen would listen to the criminal's aggressive tactics. "Shut up!" Magellan shouted loudly. The toxins in his body kept rolling and could explode at any time. "Pizarro, do you dare to provoke General Cullen? Do you really think that Cullen will accept your provocation?" Pizarro's eyes were still disdainful, and there was a mockery on his lips. He continued to open his arms. "How to provoke the general? What I said is just the truth. Does a Marine without courage deserve justice?" "That's enough," Karen said calmly. "I don't know if you don't deserve justice without courage, but you can't maintain justice without brains, right? A user with the ability of the island fruit." Pizarro was suddenly shocked. He didn't expect Karen to know his information, but in the face of this hard-won opportunity, he still spoke harshly. "Advertisement? What? Are you scared?" This time he even forgot to say his catchphrase, meow, and just stared closely at Karen's every move. Magellan also took back his heart. He believed that as long as Karen heard about the power of the island fruit, he would not let him let go of Pizarro's shackles. You know, even Impel's eternal hell is not all made of sea tower stone. If Pizarro activates his ability, he is likely to affect the surrounding environment and release these heinous criminals. No matter how much you clamor, General Cullen has never been afraid of anyone. Magellan interjected, his voice becoming more powerful. "Marine's justice cannot be blasphemed by anyone. The so-called justice is just a fig leaf for you, Marine." Katrine Deem sneered and retorted loudly. "Only when you are strong can you be qualified to talk about justice, and you, a timid kid, how can you be qualified to be a general?" When the surrounding criminals heard these words, they all echoed, and the mocking laughter rang out again. For them, who have always been in the dark, even if Pizarro's plan fails, they can still watch a good show. No matter how you think about it, you won't lose money. However, Karen remained motionless, with no movement on his face. His eyes were like cold frost, staring at these criminals firmly, as if the noisy sounds in the prison did not exist in his ears. The silence gave people an indescribable sense of oppression, making the surrounding atmosphere stagnant for a time. "Very well, I admit, I was irritated." Karen finally spoke, his voice low and majestic. "Don't you just want to break away from the shackles of Hylu Stone? I will give you a chance." As he spoke, he turned to look at Magellan. "Karen, don't be impulsive. You know, he is a user with island fruit ability. Once." Before Magellan finished speaking, with the sound of a sword, Karen had already drawn his hidden sword, and the sharp blade shone coldly in the dark prison. He turned around slowly, his eyes as sharp as a blade, looking directly at Pizarro. "I will give you a choice at the end, die, or continue to live in prison." Karen's voice was like thousands of years of ice, but Pizarro felt like he heard the most beautiful voice in the world. Pizarro was stunned for a moment, then showed a proud smile. "Advertisement. If you can do it, then come and do it, provided that you are upright." Before he finished speaking, Karen had already walked towards Pizarro step by step, his sword pointed directly at Pizarro's sea tower stone shackles. "Karen, stop," Magellan suddenly said. His face instantly became extremely anxious, and a layer of fine beads of sweat could not help but appear on his forehead. Karen still did not stop, and the steps under his feet showed no signs of stopping. He walked extremely slowly, as if he was carrying a heavy burden. But even so, every step he took was like a heavy hammer hitting Pizarro's heart. Pizarro couldn't tell whether he was excited, or maybe it was the fear that he ignored. His heartbeat speeded up involuntarily, close again. "Come on, kid. Here." Magellan stood in a dilemma, and for a moment he felt at a loss. At this moment, his heart was full of contradictions and struggles. On the one hand, he really didn't want to see Karen take the risk to unlock Pizarro's shackles. But on the other hand, Karen is the benefactor of Impel Prison after all. He could only stare at Karen's every move and continued. Once the shackles on him are released, with Pizarro's ability, he will most likely fuse and assimilate everything around him. By then, I'm afraid even the entire eternal hell will fall under his control. Pizarro still stared at Karen with provocative eyes. For fear that Karen would be affected by Magellan's words. "There are two of you. Are you still afraid of a criminal who has been in prison for a long time? Come on, kid, untie me and I will bring death to you." He has never felt that freedom is so close to him, almost, just a little bit. As long as he releases his shackles, he can activate his ability to take over the ceiling above his head. By that time, even Magellan would be of no help. Soon, he would be free. Chapter 275 My domineering power is greater than yours. Advertisement Karen finally arrived at Pizarro's side. He stopped and a sneer appeared on his lips. Very well, I will give you your freedom now. As soon as he finished speaking, with a crisp sound, the sea tower stone shackles binding Pizarro's neck were easily cut open, and the sound of the shackles falling to the ground was clear and loud. Pizarro's eyes widened in an instant, and the weakness in his body disappeared instantly as the sea tower stone shackles fell to the ground, as if a long-lost power was suddenly injected into his body. He took a deep breath and felt the long-lost flow of freedom and power. The feeling of being constrained finally disappeared completely, making him feel like he was in another world. The heaviness on his body seemed to disappear instantly, and Pizarro's legs bent slightly, regaining his balance. Success, finally success, he is free. There was dead silence all around, and all the criminals held their breath and watched Pizarro's reaction nervously. Boom! A strong aura spread from Pizarro's body, and even his muscles seemed to become stronger and thicker at this moment. This is the feeling of power I recovered. I'm free. Pizarro cheered like crazy, and the muscles in his body creaked because he had not exercised for a long time. Idiot! Release us quickly, don't forget there is Magellan. The surrounding prisoners all shouted, reminding Pizarro. They knew that Pizarro had the power to release theirs, and like the poison fruit, the island fruit was also comparable to Logia. He is the superior fruit of the stone fruit and has the ability to change the terrain and assimilate walls. This means that he can easily fuse the ceiling above his head with himself, and then transform into tiny keys to unlock their sea tower stone shackles. Ahaha. Pizarro, act quickly, Katrine Deem reminded. Of course, Demai, I will let you out right now. Pizarro finally woke up from his joy. He looked at Karen and laughed crazily. Ha 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 ha, a brat is a brat. I really don't understand how the world government could let such a retarded person become a general. However, I really want to thank you. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been able to get out of prison. Savaro's eyes became more cruel, his body suddenly rioted, and the ability of the island fruit was finally activated. Advertisement in addition to the railings made of seafloor stone, the entire prison changed instantly. The surrounding air was oppressed by invisible forces, the ground began to crack, and the walls and ceiling began to be affected. Ha 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 ha, tremble, Marine, I'm finally going back to the sea. Damn it, Pizarro, you're dreaming, even if I die here, I can't let you escape. Magellan roared angrily, and countless rays of purple spread in the direction of Savaro, but soon, his movements stopped. Pizarro was startled, then laughed out loud and said provocatively, Why, Magellan, come if you can, meow. Magellan suddenly laughed too. He looked at Pizarro as if he were looking at a monkey jumping up and down. Pizarro didn't know why, but was still immersed in his own abilities. Since you don't come, then it's my turn. He laughed maniacally, completely unaware that the ceiling above his head was being covered in black. Is this all your strength? It's really boring. Karen looked at the laughing Pizarro with contempt, with a touch of mockery in his eyes. If that's all you can do, then you can die. Pizarro looked at Karen, and a bad feeling gradually spread from his heart for no reason. He forced himself to endure the uneasiness in his heart, and used his abilities crazily, trying to fuse the ceiling above his head with himself. Then, he suddenly raised his head and finally saw the terrifying black covering that had spread across the entire wall. Armed color entanglement. How is this possible? You actually have such strong armed domineering power? Pizarro's pupils shrank suddenly, and a horrified expression appeared instantly. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The armed color can wrap around itself in weapons, but this is a whole prison. Just covered in this kid's armed color. How on earth did he do it? At the same time, he also wanted to understand why Magellan's venom was only withdrawn halfway. As we all know, in this sea, there are two things that devil fruit abilities fear most. One is seawater, and the other is sea stone. But there is another kind of ability that cannot weaken the ability user, but as long as the ability user's domineering power is not as strong as the opponent's, then he cannot affect the target. To sum it up in one sentence, I am more domineering than you. Pizarro looked at Karen in horror, but he soon recovered. If it's just a thin layer, he doesn't have a chance. Advertisement thinking of this, the armed color spread all over his body instantly, and he desperately wanted to affect the surrounding environment. After working hard for 2 minutes, the surrounding environment still did not change at all. With this purity, who are you? Pizarro pointed at Karen, feeling powerless coming over him like a tide. Karen didn't respond. The Tibetan fung in his hand rotated gently in the air, with a faint smile on his face. The surrounding prisoners also discovered the changes in Pizarro's prison, and they were also shocked. This armed color is too strong. He seems very relaxed. Oh my god, how strong is this Marine? With this strength, no wonder he can become a general. Is he really as old as he appears? Even if you were trained from your mother's womb, you wouldn't be able to be so powerful. It's not necessarily certain. I'm afraid he is also a devil fruit user. As far as I know, there are at least 3 devil fruits that can explain the situation at hand. I also know. I heard that there is a devil fruit that can rejuvenate you, right? I remember it should be bat fruit, fantasy beast species, and vampire form. The prisoners looked at each other, feeling an unprecedented sense of oppression. Karen was much more powerful than they imagined. You. A flash of panic flashed in Pizarro's eyes. What kind of monster are you? Monster? Karen was noncommittal, and his eyes gradually turned cold. I remember I told you just now. Wah. What? Die or stay in prison, Karen reminded. You seem to have chosen death. Are you kidding? You dare to kill me? Pizarro swallowed hard. Why don't you dare? Karen's tone was still cold. I am a person with island fruit ability. According to the regulations, I can only be captured alive. Pizarro stepped back unconsciously. Huh. I've heard this sentence enough times. Why do people always try to suppress me with regulations? Karen stopped in great distress and pretended to pick her ears. Pizarro was delighted. Ha ha ha, this is your marine. Really? Karen looked at Pizarro with a smile, paused, and declared loudly. Today, a big riot broke out in Eternal Hell. As the chief culprit of this riot, Avalo Pizarro resisted to the death, to prevent further damage. As a last resort, I had no choice but to take action, kill him. Chapter 276 Begging me to leave, Karen, advertisement. Karen's words were like the final verdict, and immediately, his arm domination strengthened again, completely surrounding Pizarro. A trace of despair flashed in Pizarro's eyes, and he still shouted unwillingly. You guys are really crazy. If a madman is able to implement true justice and power, then I am a madman, Karen said lightly. As soon as Karen finished speaking, his arm-domineering energy swept through the entire prison like a torrent. Pizarro suddenly felt a strong sense of oppression, and all the strength in his body was instantly withdrawn. The atmosphere in the entire prison suddenly became extremely tense, as if even the air had solidified. The other prisoners were stunned, looking at this scene and feeling a kind of fear they had never experienced before. Although this is a prison with no freedom at all, the world government wants to prevent their devil fruits from falling into the sea after their death and being obtained by other people with evil intentions. Basically, their lives are not in danger here. But now, it seems that Karen means that he wants to kill Pizarro. Just like Pizarro said, this is against the rules and subverts their cognition. How dare he? How dare you? Don't you know the rules of the world government? If you kill us, you will get yourself into big trouble. Not only the criminals, but even Magellan felt that Karen was a little impulsive. Karen, they are prisoners themselves. There is no need to risk your own future for them. You are the general. If the higher-ups find out, they will most likely be appointed or removed from your position. Magellan's words caused Karen's movements to stagnate slightly, which made Pizarro feel that Magellan's devilish face had become much kinder at this moment. That's right, little Marine, I'm a criminal to begin with, you can't. Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by Karen's laughter. Pizarro stammered. You? Why are you laughing? If the world government is really going to do this, then I have to thank you. Karen said indifferently, his right hand like an iron vice already grasping Pizarro's throat. Karen's becoming a Marine general was not as outsiders generally believed. The reason why he became a general was just a victim of the world government in the New World. Only as a general can Karen absorb hatred well. Advertisement. Although Karen felt that it was okay to enter the New World as a general, but if he was a lieutenant general, no, even a major general would be enough. Pizarro's strength was completely suppressed by Karen's arm-domineering force. His shoulders drooped weakly, his knees were slightly bent, and he almost fell to his knees. His face showed unconcealable fear, his eyes were full of begging for mercy, but his mouth was still roaring stubbornly. No, you can't do this. I still have value. Pizarro spoke with difficulty, his voice trembling with fear. Karen remained unmoved, and the hidden front wrapped in Conqueror's aura had reached Pizarro's throat. Remember to choose well in your next life. With the sound of the sharp blade cutting through flesh and blood, Pizarro's life slipped away from his fingers like quicksand. With a plop, Pizarro fell to his knees on the ground, his eyes dimmed and lost the characteristics of life. Karen stood there, with blood still remaining on the zangfeng in his hand. There was no joy or sadness on his face. He looked at Pizarro's fallen figure and said lightly, "True justice will not be changed by any rules." The surrounding prisoners exchanged horrified looks in fear. No one dared to say anything, and no one dared to look down upon the young Marine general in front of him. Magellan's expression was complicated. He knew that although Karen's move violated the regulations, it also reflected a kind of determination that went beyond convention. He suddenly thought of Shiryu, who also killed criminals. Shiryu killed for the sake of killing, but Karen, was it really just because of justice? After confirming that Pizarro was dead, Karen turned around and looked at Katrine Demai next door, eager to try. Katlin Demai froze when Karen's cold eyes stared at her, and she stepped back unconsciously. Pizarro's body was still hot and she didn't dare to say a word. For no reason, she felt that Karen seemed to be very hostile to her. Karen looked around to see if any of the prisoners around him dared to look at him. Karen was a little disappointed. Killing one person was also killing, and killing a group was also killing. It would be great if he could take the opportunity to kill all the future members of the Blackbeard Pirates. Although Garp is still nearly 20 years away from the Beehive Island incident, based on the principle of coming and going, he doesn't mind killing all the Blackbeard crew members who will besiege Garp in the future. This can be regarded as barely repaying Dorag for his help in Rog Town. Karen. Karen, they didn't take the initiative to provoke you. Magellan noticed Karen's thoughts and rushed into the cell to take Karen out. Advertisement. Karen stretched, put the Zhangfeng back into the scabbard, and said in a waning tone. It's so boring. Magellan wiped the sweat from his face. He was really afraid that Karen would clean up all the criminals in the entire eternal hell. Okay. Karen shrugged and whispered to Magellan. Let's find our real goal. Magellan nodded quickly. At this moment, he just wanted to help Karen finish his work and then send Karen out of Impel prison. Just one Shiryu is enough to give him a headache. It seems there is no good show to watch. Here, Bullet withdrew his gaze and prepared to return to his training. Doflamingo's eyes shone with excitement. He witnessed the whole process and naturally heard what Karen and Magellan said. So, he keenly captured a piece of information. Karen came to Impel with a mission. He had a bold guess in his mind that the reason why Karen came to Impel was for himself. He has become a general, which means that the 7 warlords of the sea system has been implemented. And isn't he, Don Quixote Doflamingo, the perfect candidate for 7 warlords of the sea? Karen, you finally bowed your head. No matter how strong you are, it doesn't matter. As long as you are still in the system, the endless compromises must be what you need to face the most. Come on, beg me to leave. Karen. Doflamingo believes that the reason why Karen can still become a general is a compromise. Otherwise, how could Karen, who had offended the celestial dragons, still become a marine general? He must have made a deal with the 5 elders. Karen, sometimes secrets are also a weapon. Saint Wechuli, it seems that I wrongly blamed you. After all, I am a celestial dragon who has mastered the secret. How could you let me stay in the dark Impel prison? How should I face him? Chapter 277. I'm here. Hello. Advertisement. What are you laughing at? Bullet, who was about to leave, paused slightly and noticed Doflamingo's unusual excitement. Didn't you hear just now? The reason why he came to Impel is precisely because of me. Doflamingo stared closely at Karen and Magellan. If he was just suspicious just now he was absolutely sure, because the direction Magellan and Karen came from was exactly the cell where he was. Bullet looked at Doflamingo, then at Karen and Magellan, and realized that their goal was exactly his direction. Isn't he your enemy? Bullet murmured, then he suddenly realized and looked at Doflamingo with pity. How on earth did you offend him? Is he seeking revenge? Doflamingo's smile froze and he considered this possibility in his mind. He knew that Karen was gentle on the surface, but actually had a crazy side hidden inside. It seems that it is not impossible. His heart felt cold for a moment, but he recovered quickly. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Even if the 5 elders did not reach a deal with Karen, they would not let Karen hurt them again. He is the man who holds the secrets of the Tianlong people. If he dies, then the people he arranged will definitely make the information known to the public. That scene is definitely not what the 5 elders want to see. Thinking of this, his panic calmed down a bit. Impossible, there's no way the higher-ups would let Karen hurt me again. His voice was low, as if he was talking to himself. Above, Bullet looked towards the ceiling, found nothing. Hey, you don't know my identity yet, lousy as a Tianlong. Doflamingo lowered his head, his laughter revealing a sense of superiority. Advertisement, dragon people. Bullet stared at Doflamingo, his thoughts drifting to the distant sea. At that time, he was still a crew member of the Roger Pirates. His captain Roger once solemnly told him, "Hey, Bullet, you know, we are all born equal. There should be no so-called class divisions in this world. The existence of the celestial dragons is just a historical mistake. We may be different physically, but spiritually, everyone deserves his own freedom and dreams." At that time, Bullet was still very immature and only wanted to increase his strength, so he acted very impatiently. You always say this, my captain, but you should know what happened to me. If everyone grows up in the war like me and is forced to endure countless pain and betrayal, then what is the use of such ideals and freedom? Significance? Roger just looked at him with a smile, and his deep eyes seemed to be able to see through Bullet's inner pain and confusion. Bullet, your experience is indeed difficult, it cannot be denied, but precisely because of this, you should understand that true freedom is not getting rid of material chains, but the liberation of the soul. Bullet was silent. He could not fully understand Roger's words, but a seed was planted in his heart, a seed of desire for freedom and equality in a higher sense. Bullet, I don't have much time. Roger's voice was low, his hands were clenched into fists, and his shoulders were shaking slightly. For so many years, I have always had a crazy plan in my heart. At the end of my life, I don't want to hesitate anymore. Maybe this plan will change many people and many things, but at least. The subsequent memories gradually blurred, and Bullet could not remember the aftermath of that day. He only knew that after that day, Roger seemed to be carrying something. From that day on, he knew that Roger's death was coming, and he was worried that his vow to become stronger would not be fulfilled, which made him very anxious. This anxiety made him feel confused. Under the influence of Roger, he gradually developed the consciousness that, you must protect your companions, and he was not decisive enough at the beginning of the battle. He thought that he had become weaker. At the same time, he doubted Roger's strength. After challenging Roger again for the last time and still failing, he quit the Roger Pirates and became famous as a newcomer. Yes, my friend. Doflamingo suddenly raised his head, his eyes as sharp as knives. I am a celestial dragon. So the entire world government has to pay attention to my existence. They fear me, they need me, and they try to control me. Those people have completely forgotten an important fact. I, Doflamingo, will never be manipulated or controlled by anyone. Even if it's Karen, it's the same. Advertisement. Isn't he trying to get benefits from me? I won't let him succeed. Thinking of this, Doflamingo's voice became more passionate and fanatical, and his words were loud and full of firm belief. It was as if he had already witnessed Karen coming in person and being servile and begging for mercy in front of him. Bullet on the side was slightly startled when he heard this, and stared at Doflamingo steadily for a while. Then, he slowly withdrew his gaze, turned around, and walked slowly towards the darkness deep in his own cell with steady steps. A celestial dragon? It doesn't matter. For Bullet, this is just an insignificant term. Even though he was born in the never-ending war country, under the rule of the celestial dragons, he didn't have much hatred and fear. No matter how you whip him, he will smile naturally. Only by continuously becoming stronger can he feel the meaning of his existence. Roger, I will definitely surpass you and become the strongest. Karen, this is it. Magellan and Karen finally arrived at their destination. They stood quietly in front of Bullet's eerie cell, their eyes tightly locked on the terrifying existence known as the Devil's Descendant by the world. Open his cell. Under Doflamingo's gaze, Karen spoke calmly. Magellan hesitated for a while and found the key representing Bullet's door. He had seen Karen's strength twice, and he had a lot of confidence in Karen's ability to successfully conquer Bullet. So, Magellan took a deep breath and slowly took out a bunch of heavy keys from his waist. With a crisp sound, the cell door slowly opened. Bah, Karen, see you again. Doflamingo raised his head and his smile stopped, because Doflamingo, who was originally looking proud and ready to welcome freedom, suddenly discovered that the cell door opened by Magellan did not belong to him. Damn Magellan. Lousy is here. Hello. Chapter 278 Fairness. Advertisement. Magellan was startled by the sudden sound and almost dropped the key in his hand. He turned around sharply, glared at Doflamingo, and said loudly, Damn it Doflamingo, what are you yelling about? But he didn't expect that Doflamingo would be even more angry than him. He felt like his lungs were going to explode. He laughed angrily and said, Bah, 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 bah. Magellan, I should ask you what the hell you are doing. I'm obviously here. Why do you want to open the cell next door? Magellan scratched his head, really not understanding what Doflamingo meant. Karen, we meet again. Doflamingo looked directly past Magellan and looked at Karen, saying with a sinister tone. Congratulations, General Cullen. Karen turned around, and he didn't expect Doflamingo and Bullet to be neighbors. In the animation, he remembered that Doflamingo knew the secrets related to Marie-Joye's secret treasure, and to prevent him from leaking the secret, he should be kept in solitary confinement. However, this is not important. Karen looked at Doflamingo calmly. The corners of the mouth curved together. Congratulations, Doflamingo prisoner. I haven't seen you for a few days. Why are you so embarrassed? He did not hide the sarcasm in his tone, who let Doflamingo offend him. A hint of coldness flashed in Doflamingo's eyes. He stared into Karen's eyes and spoke again. How does it feel to be a general? Not bad, at least much better than prisoners. Karen's calm tone finally made Doflamingo break his guard. He subconsciously wanted to raise his hand, but instead raised his hand. You, oh? Karen raised her eyebrows, still with a faint smile on her lips. Doflamingo tried hard to calm down his emotions and suppress his inner anger. You came here with a mission, right? Karen looked at Doflamingo as if he were a fool, and the meaning was self-evident. Nonsense, if it wasn't for a mission, who would be willing to come to this dark and pale prison? Bah. Doflamingo laughed out loud when he received a yes answer and continued. Advertisement, I guess 7 warlords of the sea. His tone was very proud, and Karen was a little surprised, but then he figured it out. No, Doflamingo wouldn't think that he came to Impel to make him the 7 warlords of the sea. Karen looked at Doflamingo's expression and became more and more sure of his guess. In the animation, it was not clearly stated in which year 7 warlords of the sea was established, but it must have been after Roger established the Great Pirate Age. World government and marine are unable to adapt to the tide of the new era, resulting in the birth of a deformed product. But in this life, Karen clearly understood that one of the reasons for the establishment of 7 warlords of the sea was because of Doflamingo's self-rescue. Yes, how do you know? Karen pretended to be shocked and decided to tease Doflamingo. Bah, Karen, I know a lot more than you think. The smile on Doflamingo's face became even stronger. Karen was indeed what he imagined. It was because of him and the 7 warlords of the sea that he came. So, that is to say, he will be free soon. Doflamingo looked mysterious and continued to ask. I guess I must be on the 7 warlords of the sea list. Karen thought for a moment and nodded. Doflamingo was indeed on the list, but his name was crossed out. Bah. Magellan, did you hear that?
Doflamingo changed the topic and said, I told you before that I will be able to leave soon.
Lousy is a Tianlong person. Magellan's mouth twitched slightly, and he looked at Doflamingo with a blank expression as if he was suffering from mental illness. He looked at Karen awkwardly. I secretly thought something was wrong. Didn't we agree that there would only be one? Why would there be another one?
Ha ha ha. Karen also laughed. Doflamingo felt uncomfortable when he was looked at by Karen. What kind of look was that? Dull. Mockery. Or is it pity? Why are you laughing?
Doflamingo stopped smiling. Karen said calmly, I just thought of something funny. Advertisement, HMPH, so what are you waiting for, Magellan? Doflamingo snorted coldly, hurry up and open the cell door. This. Magellan looked at Karen with an embarrassed look on his face. It clearly only asked him to cooperate with Karen to conquer the bullet who was about to become the 7 warlords of the sea in the prison. Doflamingo's name was not mentioned at all. But the current situation, both Karen and Doflamingo's performance told him that there are 2 so-called 7 warlords of the sea in eternal hell. Karen smiled lightly. I think Magellan has opened the cell door. Doflamingo's smile froze and he stared into Karen's eyes.
What do you mean? He had a bad feeling in his heart.
So far, everything you said is right, but Karen's smile became more obvious. You are not the only one on the list of 7 warlords of the sea. You mean? Doflamingo looked sharply at Bullet, who had returned to exercising. Open the cell door, Warden Magellan. Karen withdrew his gaze and looked again at the man with explosive muscles in the darkness. He is tall and strong, with well-defined muscles, and seems to be born for fighting. He is about 5 in height, and his body is tall and straight, full of power. Just looking at it from a distance gives people a terrible sense of oppression. Due to his long-term participation in combat, Bullet's skin has a deep bronze tone. Although he has severe scars and injuries, it does not weaken his sense of wildness and strength, but instead adds a layer of calmness and unyielding temperament. Why? Doflamingo couldn't bear it anymore, he roared loudly. Lousy is a celestial dragon, and I propose the system of 7 warlords of the sea. Why can he go out, but I have to stay in this dark and pale prison? This is not fair, I want to contact the 5 elders. Doflamingo's roar sounded in the cold cell, and the sound echoed in the endless darkness. A few keywords made all the prisoners stare in Doflamingo's direction. Tianlong people, free and fair. Before the advent of the Great Pirate Age, most of the so-called pirates were forced to become pirates because they could not stand the oppression of the celestial dragons. Facing the high amount of heavenly gold, it is almost impossible for ordinary people to survive. How ironic that the celestial dragons actually want fairness. Doesn't he know that the celestial dragons themselves stand at the pinnacle of injustice? More than half of the prisoners looked at Doflamingo with hateful eyes. This look brought Doflamingo's mind back to many years ago. Chapter 279. Do you know what you were talking about? Advertisement that year, because of a stupid man, they moved out of the Holy Land Marijoa, and their status also changed from the aloof celestial dragons to what he called untouchables. A trace of anger and unwillingness flashed in Doflamingo's eyes, and the memory was still vivid, as if it happened yesterday. That day, the 3 of them, father and son, were hung on the city wall, with eyes full of disgust, fear, and hatred. Countless people below were roaring, counting down the mistakes committed by the Tianlong people. The sky-wide fire kept burning his skin, and sharp arrows shot at the helpless man. He watched helplessly as these people in front of him were doing evil and cruel things in the name of justice. The squeezing emotions completely exploded at this moment. Remember me, I will never die. I will live no matter what, and then I will kill you all without leaving a single one behind. Then, he did it. I didn't expect him to be a celestial dragon. How could the Draco be in eternal hell? What exactly has changed in the outside world? Damn Tianlong, I want to kill him, I must kill him. Now, facing the same scene, the same control, the same malicious eyes. Doflamingo still would not give in, and Conquerors was spreading from Doflamingo's body. Even though he had no limbs and his body was suffering from a strong sense of weakness, he still couldn't hide his proof of being a king. Karen glanced at him coldly, and the Conquerors gathered into a line, completely interrupting the Conquerors that Doflamingo had finally gathered. Don't you think it's a little ridiculous? You want fairness? But it's unfair that you can live?
Karen's eyes showed no pity, only hatred. If it hadn't been for him, how could his men have stayed in the waters of the Sabayati Islands forever?
Doflamingo's eyes suddenly widened. He had completely lost his calm, and the anger on his face was about to burst out. He repeatedly mentioned celestial dragons and 7 warlords of the sea, obviously losing his rational judgment. You don't understand what fairness is. Doflamingo's voice was high-pitched and full of anger. I have been at the top from the beginning. How could I have fallen to this point? Advertisement Karen was not affected by his roar and still looked at him with that calm gaze. How can the lives of those untouchables be compared with mine? Wait, Karen, I will definitely go out, I will. Karen raised the corners of her mouth slightly, and her voice was emotionless. As expected, I should still kill you. With that said, Conquerors burst out from Karen's body like substance, shooting straight into the sky, and the entire cell fell into deathly silence at this moment. Doflamingo's body stiffened suddenly, and the murderous intent and mania in his eyes were completely interrupted by Karen's invisible pressure. His conquerors could no longer expand, and he even found it difficult to breathe.
The sense of oppression was like a mountain between heaven and earth pressing on him, with no way to escape.
Magellan was startled, and this time he stood in front of Karen without hesitation. Withstood most of Karen's conqueror's pressure. When the above informed him to welcome Karen, he was told very clearly that Karen must not be allowed to harm Doflamingo. This is not only the meaning of Marine Fleet Admiral, but also the Five Elders world government repeatedly warned him, which is enough to show the importance of Doflamingo. He had already seen Karen kill Pizarro with his own eyes, so he had no doubt that Karen still dared to kill Doflamingo in front of him this time. Stop it, Karen! He stood between Karen and Doflamingo, intuitively feeling how terrifying Karen's conquerors was. If he really confronts Karen, he will definitely die. Karen looked at Magellan coldly, hesitated for a while, and his murderous intention gradually disappeared. Magellan breathed a sigh of relief, and cold sweat flowed down unconsciously. How dare you? Doflamingo said breathlessly, his voice hoarse like the sound of cut wind. If you want to live, then keep your mouth shut. Magellan waved his hand, and a poison that was almost invisible to the naked eye spread in his body and floated directly in the direction of Doflamingo. As soon as he came into contact with Doflamingo's body, Doflamingo seemed to be enduring great pain, and his whole body was shaking like chaff. Well, he howled in pain, his veins were exposed, and cold sweat wet his prison uniform like rain. You are not qualified to ask for anything. Karen stopped in front of him, lowered his head and looked at his expression full of anger and humiliation, with a sneer at the corner of his mouth. What does your identity as a Tianlong person mean to me? None. Doflamingo could no longer bear the insult. He opened his mouth to refute, but in the end nothing came out. Advertisement the pain from his soul could barely keep him awake. Also, you don't think your leaving is really a good thing for you. Karen dropped these words coldly, turned around and walked in the direction of Bullet. Just when he reached the door, he suddenly stopped and looked back at Doflamingo, who was completely suppressed. By the way, Karen chuckled, I'll give you a piece of advice. You'd better not mention dragon people here, because you are just a prisoner. He waved his hand as if saying goodbye to a dead dog. The intense physical pain and inner humiliation made Doflamingo unable to bear it any longer, and he fainted with a plopping. Karen walked to Bullet's cell. At this time, he had stopped exercising and was looking coldly at the unexpected visitor. Karen and Bullet's eyes met in the air. Neither of them spoke, they just stared like this. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 minutes passed. Douglas Bullet. Marine. The two spoke at the same time as if they had agreed. Then, he fell into a strange atmosphere of silence. Karen looked at him. He had an extremely tough and conceited aura about him, and he could feel an obvious disconnect, as if he and the world were completely different existences. It was Karen who spoke again. He really had no intention of spending any more time here. Want to go out? Karen gate of opening gets straight to the point and gets to the point. The corners of Bullet's mouth curved into a wide arc, and his sinister teeth were vaguely visible in the hazy darkness. He narrowed his eyes, seeming a little surprised and a little impatient. The long silence made him seem a little anxious, but he was a patient person until Karen broke the awkward atmosphere. Go out? Bullet chuckled, his voice low and hoarse. Do you know what you're talking about? Chapter 280 Douglas Bullet? Advertisement, certainly. Karen responded calmly, her voice unhurried and indifferent. At this moment, Bullet slowly walked out of the endless darkness. He was tall and burly, like a moving mountain, with every step carrying a heavy sense of strength. He was tall, and Karen could only reach the opponent's chest when standing in front of him. But judging from the auras exuded by the two, it is difficult to tell which one is stronger and which one is weaker. As Bullet gradually approached Karen, he finally stopped when he was only 1 step away. He lowered his head slightly, looked down at Karen in a condescending manner, and asked coldly. Do you know who I am? This downward gaze is full of contempt and disdain, as if in front of Bullet, Karen is the prisoner waiting for trial. Faced with such a provocative gesture, Karen raised the corners of her mouth slightly and let out a contemptuous chuckle. Immediately afterwards, Karen's body began to rise rapidly. In just a few seconds, he continued to expand and grow like a balloon, until he reached a terrifying height of nearly 6 meters. Now he's a head above Bullet. This is certainly not because Karen ate the sun god fruit. This is Karen's masterful use of the master's life returning technique. By precisely controlling the expansion and contraction of your own muscles and bones, you can successfully change your body shape. 6 meters is almost his limit. Seeing this sudden change, a hint of surprise flashed through Bullet's originally cold eyes, but he quickly regained his composure. Karen smiled slightly and looked calmly. Douglas Bullet was born in the country of endless war, on the Grand Line. He was abandoned by his mother when he was just born and became an orphan. He was adopted by the enemy's army. He joined the war as a boy soldier when he was 8 years old. Since his unit commander's name was Douglas, he was called the 9th Bullet of Douglas's unit. Douglas Bullet, that's where your name comes from. Bullet listened quietly. Advertisement Karen continued. After joining the battlefield, your main task is to lead the way on the battlefield to step on landmines, or to open the way with bombs. Because you have dared to fight in the war since you were a child, you were quickly appreciated. Later, during a mission, your companions betrayed you due to jealousy and fear. Later you will kill all the young soldiers who betrayed and harmed you. Bullet still didn't speak, nor did he try to stop him. This feeling of learning his story from others made him feel novel. You became a national hero at the age of 14, and the country's victory was close at hand. After annihilating the enemy army in the last war, you were betrayed by Captain Douglas in your own country. So you destroyed your own country and army, and you have been there ever since. Being hunted by the world government, he went to sea and became a pirate.
Then, after becoming a pirate, he looked for a battlefield and never failed. He met Gall D. Roger, challenged him and lost, and then joined the Roger Pirates as a challenger.
Roger was arrested and died. You began to make a name for yourself in this sea as a rookie pirate. When you were 22 years old, Marine launched a buster call to round you up. After your physical strength was gradually exhausted by the buster call, later, he was taken to Impel Prison Eternal Hell. Speaking of Roger's death, Bullet's body trembled for a moment. It seems that for him, the 3 years in the Roger Pirates were the years that changed him the most.
Until now, in the year 1506 of the Hainan calendar, you have been in Impel Prison for 7 years.
This is all Douglas Bullet's information. To be honest, Karen was surprised when she saw his information for the first time. Bullet was already neck and neck with Pluton Rayleigh when he was 15 years old.
When he was 19 years old, he was beaten by Pluton Rayleigh. It was only after the battles he had experienced in the past year that he had the strength and confidence to defeat the older generation.
It's been 7 years. Bullet let out a sigh. Although he never stopped exercising in prison, he actually knew that due to the influence of Hailu Stone, the results he achieved were minimal. If he continues this process, he will never be able to surpass Roger in his heart. Yeah, it's been 7 years. How about it, Bullet? Do you want to go out with me and see the sea again? Bullet's eyes were filled with complex emotions. He did not respond immediately to Karen's proposal, but was silent for a moment, seeming to be thinking about something. You want me to join you? Bullet's deep voice contained a hint of sneer. Lousy as a pirate. Even if you can let me escape from this prison, I can't work for Marine. Karen did not show any displeasure because of this. He just smiled and said calmly, speaking of which, you may not believe that pirates can really serve Marine in this absurd world. Besides, Karen changed the topic and stared into Bullet's eyes, who said he would play for Marine. Here, Magellan, who had just stepped into the prison, hurriedly retracted his steps and the cold sweat that had finally stopped sliding down his face again. I didn't hear anything. This is just General Karen's method to conquer the pirates. Bullet's eyes met Karen's in the air, and he saw something called ambition rising in the young Marine's eyes. Ha ha ha, interesting. As expected of the Marine who owns conquers, you remind me of someone. Advertisement? Who? I thought his name was Garp. Bullet's thoughts were racing and he slowly spit out a name. Karen's eyes narrowed slightly. Sure enough, that heartless lieutenant general who was always laughing and joking also owns something like conquerors. Otherwise, there is no way to explain why Garp is qualified to fight Roger. Only by experiencing Conqueror's entanglement yourself can you know what kind of power it is. Only, Karen had never experienced the power of Conquerors from Garp. Are you hiding? Or disappeared? Karen couldn't understand. Do you know him? Yes, that guy is a Marine hero? Bullet fell into recollection. In the Roger Pirates for so long, he had fought against Garp more than once. Even the reason why he was arrested was because Garp and Sengoku personally led the team. Of course. Karen smiled faintly, speaking of which, he and I have some relatives. Anyway, he already has an inexplicable relationship with the monkey family. It's like his style. Bullet looked Karen up and down. He didn't like looking up at someone to talk. However, he changed the topic. I know that you were pretty good, but the strength you just showed is not enough. Bullet looked away. Although Karen's strength just now made him full of desire to fight, that was all. If he was to be controlled by others, then the opponent must at least have Roger's strength. He actually doesn't mind who he fights for, as long as you are better than him, whether it's a pirate or a Marine, it doesn't matter to him. There is only one thing he has to do, keep challenging, keep growing, and become the real strongest. How do you know that's all my strength? Besides, isn't it just right that I'm not as strong as you? Once you get out of Impel Prison, you can leave if you want. The premise is that you are still willing to leave after seeing my strength.